Hello and welcome to Arco. Just a week on from Munich, the location is very different, but I'm pleased to say the faces are the same. My trusty co-commentator Mike Langley and very special guest, a member of Team Australia, Campbell Harrison alongside me. But before we bring you today's semi-final, let's have a quick recap of yesterday's qualifiers. A town and a name synonymous with climbing, Arco is nestled in a peaceful valley just to the north of Lake Garda in the Trentino region of Italy. This weekend, as it has done for several days every year since 1987, Arco welcomed a who's who of world climbing, and the streets of the old town have been full of familiar faces such as Domen Skofic, who seemed to be closer to his old self with a decent performance today which saw him through easily. One man who needs no introduction to the climbing world, but who has been conspicuously absent from World Cups this year, is Adam Ondra. The two-time world champion never seems to struggle to get back into competition mode, and so it was today, when he eased into the semis with two tops and minimal fuss. Romain Desgrange is so far having the best season of his life, and fellow legend Ramonet is also looking on form. Both will climb in the semis tomorrow. Joining them will be Alex Megos, he of the first ever 9A on-site, who hasn't climbed in a lead World Cup for 6 years. Jakob Schubert hasn't been in a lead World Cup this year, but he topped both qualifying routes and is also through easily. Elsewhere, most of the big names were through, but Jan Hoyer and Loic Timmermans missed out, such was the strength of the field. Tomorrow is likely to be brutally competitive and fascinating to boot, with so many climbers not yet tested in lead World Cups this year. The women's competition is also incredibly competitive this weekend, and, as ever, Jessie Pilz is right up there and in the hunt for a win. Jessie has had something of a monopoly on fifth this season, having finished every World Cup there so far and qualifying there today. She was second in Arco in the Youth World Championships 2 years ago, and a repeat tomorrow would constitute an excellent result. A previous Arco winner and runner-up here last year, Jane Kim is always in the fight, and two tops today means she'll climb again tomorrow, as will Mina Markovic, who couldn't quite claim two tops but still did enough to share fifth with Jessie Pilz. Anna Verhoeven was, along with Jane, Janja Garmeret and Julia Chanaudy, also in the two tops club and is also through easily. Team Italy had a decent day too, with teenage sensation Laura Rigora through, along with Claudia Gasolfi. Ashima Shiraishi, another teenage prodigy, is also here in her first ever Senior World Cup, so just about anything could happen tomorrow in the women's semis and final. Here's what some of the competitors made of the day. So fresh down from the wall, we've got Mina Markovic, and Mina, you were just saying you always feel like you climb well in Arco.
Yeah, usually I can really climb well here, and atmosphere is great, so it's good time.
And how were the qualifying routes this morning?
They were really nice, the good tracks, long ones. I managed to top at once and touch the top in a second one. So it was almost perfect, but otherwise I think the tracks in the middle, they were pretty hard and difficult.
And this is World Cup number 4. How do you feel about your season so far?
Yeah, it started well, but then I had some slips on I don't know what, but I believe that I prepared well and I'm looking forward to climb well.
Margot Hayes alongside me now. Margot, fresh down from the wall, and this is only your second time in Arco, right? How are you enjoying it?
I love Arco. It's so beautiful. The first time I came here, I fell in love with it. It's such a special town, all the climbing vibe, and I mean, it's beautiful. You look around you, you have a beautiful venue, and then behind you have beautiful real rocks, and it doesn't get much better.
And how did you feel on the qualifying routes this morning?
This morning I had a pretty bad mess up on the first one, actually. I climbed on the second route first, actually, the blue one, and I kind of just popped off, and so that was upsetting for me, but I had to set it aside, and I knew that all I could do was top the second one, and that's what I did, so we'll see if that's enough to get me through, but you know, sometimes it's like that, so my fingers are crossed.
So delighted to say, back at the IFSC, we've got Adam Ondra. Firstly, great to have you back. And secondly, you were just saying you find this a hard wall to climb on. It's very long.
Yeah, especially all I have been training on was pretty much like pure power and interval bouldering, which is the most important for the Project Hard. Potential 9C in Norway, where I'm coming back right the next week on Tuesday. So I haven't really trained any pure endurance, and this wall is all about the endurance. But I mean, I really like this event, I really like the crowd, and hopefully I will do my best.
As ever, full results can be found at the IFSC website. We'll be live with the semi-finals at 11 AM and the finals at 5 PM. And here we are, just 3 or 4 minutes away from the start of the semi-finals. The stories about which are being dominated by some particularly big names. Mike, we haven't seen a starting lineup like this, maybe ever in a World Cup.
Yeah, sorry about that, Charlie. Just a quick technical incident here. Yeah, like you say, as we saw in the qualification highlights there, it's an incredible name and a lot of rock superstars that have made it through to the semi-finals here today. And combine that with the legends of the sport that we've seen early on in 2017 in the lead qualifications. Really interesting. People like Ashima Shiraishi, just 16 years old, come through as her first senior lead World Cup, and this is really exciting. That to see Ashima competing on the World Cup stage is just absolutely massive. Combine that with Laura Rigora, the Italian superstar, Alex Magos, Adam Ondra. We've got so many rock legends. It's just absolutely awesome to see. And yeah, just super excited.
Okay, and Campbell, you've been climbing alongside these legends. Watched them on the stream a while back. Must be incredible to actually be alongside them now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I started watching the streams a few years back, and I'd get up every morning at like 3 in the morning sometimes to watch the finals of the Lead World Cups, and to see sort of who were my idols as now my competitors is really exciting. But it's always important to remember that they are my competitors, even though they might be these amazing superstars that once I wanted their autograph, and now I want my name above theirs on the list. So yeah, but it's always really cool, and it's always super motivating to come and see them climb.
How is it being in isolation with them? Do you find it slightly intimidating, or are you able to see them just as normal people, which is ultimately what they are?
That's a really good question. When I first started out, I think it was really intimidating. But then, yeah, it's sort of something that was instilled in me by one of the national coaches, in that, yeah, they are my competitors, and if I don't look at them as such, then I'll never have that will and belief to succeed. So I just have to go into isolation and do my own thing. So yeah, it can be tricky to start with, but once you've done a few, you realize your place and you realize how it all works, and you've just got to do your own thing, because that's how you're going to be best prepared to climb the routes. And so you've got to put that aside, that these people next to you are superstars and they're looking to win. You've got to have that same drive, I think.
Well, luckily we don't have to compete against them, we just get to watch. And Mike Langley, I'll ask you again, I believe we had a problem with your microphone. I was just saying, absolutely star-studded lineup, and we are allowed to be slightly overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, as we saw in the qualification highlights there, we've got a lot of very interesting athletes who have joined us, kind of rock superstars throughout their careers, and they've come to join the competitions. And someone like Ashima Shiraishi, she's been competing in USA, but she's only just old enough now to compete in the lead, and just the atmosphere around here, just everybody stops and watches Ashima, and she's done really well to get through to the semi-final. Really was looking, she was just absolutely cruising yesterday. And Laura Rigora, the young Italian, Adam Ondra is here, Alex Magos is here. We've got rock legends who are also competitors at heart. They're here to compete against the legends such as Jenya Gambret, Jane Kim, Roman de Grange. There's just so many big names. It's going to be an absolutely awesome day.
Certainly is, and we're already underway here in Arco on the legendary Rock Master Wall. We have Kyra Condi on the women's route and Naoki Shimatani on the men's route. There he is. Kyra, of course, competing in some Boulder World Cups this year. She was commentating with me in Vale, in action here in the lead wall in Arco, and comes into this World Cup in excellent form. Been climbing well all summer. It hasn't always translated into results in the World Cups, but she's off to a good start on this women's route. The women on the right and the men on the left.
yeah, Cara was saying this was her second Lead World Cup ever. So I think her first one was back in maybe 2012 in Atlanta. So it's her first Lead World Cup off of home soil. And she was super duper psyched to make it through to the semi-finals. She squeaked in 26th place, but I think she's been training a lot of bouldering lately and a lot of finger strength. But that really translates over to being able to fight when you get pumped and that sort of thing. So she's really psyched to be in the semi-finals for the second time in her career. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have her, as you say, in another Lead World Cup and her first European one. Just to give you some idea of how high the climbers are up there, as we see a close-up of Naoki. That's about a third of the way up the wall, maybe a quarter to a third of the wall here in Arco. Semi-finals right next to each other, so the profile of both routes pretty much identical, and the volumes placed by the route setters. You can see the large blue and green volumes pretty much identical on both routes. So men's and women's routes not actually that easy to separate, as we see Kyra making her way into the first really steep section. Above this, of course, the wall in Arco, as you may remember if you've watched our previous year's coverage, does actually overhang to the point where it begins to go back downhill. It's quite an extraordinary profile of wall here. Thus far, Kyra looking pretty steady. Naoki slightly slower. Remember, time could be an issue here. Cameron, we were just saying about how the profile of the routes is quite similar. When we first arrived, don't want to embarrass you too much, but you weren't entirely sure on first glance which was the men's and the women's routes. Interesting. Normally you can, as an athlete, you can identify it immediately.
Yeah, well, I guess that's somewhat true, but yeah, for sure, I found it really hard to tell the difference between the two. And I think it just goes to show that with climbing, the gap between the genders is very small. Yeah, I thought the yellow route might have been a women's route. And then once it was explained to me that it was otherwise, and I got a little bit closer, I was like, oh no, this makes sense. But the women, this particular route has a really, really interesting style in that they can't really stop and shake out almost anywhere after they get through that first roof section. And then the men's, however, looked like it had a few little rests in it and good holds and that sort of thing. So I thought maybe that was going to be for the women. But yeah, no. And we just had Naoki come off the wall about halfway up, I think. So it's a pretty good start for the first climber. That said, it did take him quite a while to get there. And with the 6-minute time limit, it could be interesting seeing a few more climbers come out.
Yes, out next you've got the familiar haircut of Claudia Gasolfi, climbing in front of a home crowd. Didn't make it into the semi-final by much, climbs in reverse order, so she qualified 25th, climbed second today, and we just saw Kyra Conley coming off around the halfway point of the wall, as you say. Same for Naoki Shimatani, she's climbing slightly slower, but roughly the same height on the wall. Keep you up to date with the scores as they come through. In the men's competition, Elon of Canada is out. Here's compatriot Sean McCall not taking part here in Arco. He is here, sustained a minor finger injury, we're led to believe, so he's not taking part. So Elan, the sole representative of Canada in today's semi-finals. And Elan makes his way onto the stage, slight delay there. Claudia Gasolfi untroubled as yet.
I think what's going to be really interesting at the start of this qualification round and going on later into the later morning and into the afternoon is the temperature here in Arco. I think that's going to play a significant part, with currently 28 degrees close to the base of the wall, but it's looking like it's going to rise up to 30 or 32 degrees later on. And I think the modern style of route setting with a lot of pinches, a lot of slopers and a lot of volumes, I think it's going to be really interesting to see which competitors deal with the issues of the temperature the best, and trying to keep that under control and keeping cool backstage and coming out to perform.
We'll also be seeing Stefano Gasolfi later on, of course. He'll climb second to last. Excellent day for him yesterday in the qualifiers. Had multiple tops in both the men's and women's competition. Had 4 climbers yesterday in the women's: Julia Chanaudy, Janja Garnbret, Jane Kim and Anak Verhoeven, who topped both routes. And in the men's competition we had 5. It was Romain Desgrange having the season of his life. Stefano Gasolfi, who I just mentioned, some guy called Alex Megos. We don't see him in many World Cups. Rumours going around he's quite handy. And Adam Ondra and Jakob Schubert. So it should be quite a second half of this final. We're off to a good start as well. So Claudia just hitting the first roof. Still short of Kyra's high point as yet. Elan just below her, down and left. As I say, men on the left, women on the right.
I think you can start to see now with the athletes coming through the bottom third of the wall that the route setters have kind of made the classic route challenge here, which is building the routes as they go, steady start, build significantly through the middle and get super, super hard. And just as we lost the Italian athlete on the right-hand side there, Claudia Gasolfi, that's exactly what we're talking about. The routes really starting to build very rapidly. The routes here are quite long, just over 15 metres, and the route setters have put on around 48 to 50 moves, depending on how many intermediates and bits and bobs you use. Let's have a look on the left side then. Milan doing a good job. This is where it really starts to ramp up, and this is where the slopers kick in, and lower down we can see some of the smaller crimps, and if you really think that the temperature is going to affect the slopers as we get higher up on the wall and the skin conditions. So onto left-hand side of the wall then, using the arete nicely. Canadian athlete does a good job to stick that, and you can see it's just searching for the foothold options. It's a really good burn there, halfway up the wall. Didn't quite get into the famous Arco roof that you see here. I'm sure we'll see plenty of athletes later on heading into that section, and I'm really looking forward to see what the route setters have got on offer for us through the famous roof, as it were. And you'll see why it's famous later, because it's such a classic feature. Is actually where the
It's about to be all Japan on the wall now. Shinichiro Nomura and Risa Ota will be out next. As we've frequently discussed, Japan perhaps not quite as well represented in lead climbing as they are in the bouldering. Still no slouches. Their team were in the same restaurants as us last night. Still plenty of them. Maybe not the numbers we see in bouldering, but as I say, still extremely well represented, especially when you consider per head of population. So Risa on the wall and underway. Campbell, we were just talking about this famous wall here in Arco. We were talking about whether you're intimidated by the other athletes. Who's intimidated by the wall? It's such a famous place.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was talking about the roof on the grey wall in particular with one of the athletes just before. I find it really, really tricky. Not so much tricky to read from the ground, but you're climbing up, obviously, the whole way up the wall, and then all of a sudden you have to make this switch, and you're climbing back down again. You have to swing your feet over, figuring out exactly when to swing your feet around, and which toe hooks and heel hooks to use and that sort of thing. It's really, really strange and unique climbing, and it's really exciting. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit intimidating. And every time I think I've gotten into the roof. Both years I've competed in Arco, and every time I'm like, what am I doing as soon as I come through? But yeah, it's nice, and you never know. Sometimes they put some nice jugs in there so you can get a rest, and then sometimes you pull through and it's just terrible. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's a really strange and interesting piece of wall, but it's always nice if you can get up there and give it a go.
I think what's interesting as well, when you look at the features of the wall, not only do we have the bolt-ons and the volumes on there, but there's also a lot of inbuilt features into the wall, and some of the athletes who have competed here over many years start to get to know those features, and they can train on this wall in the off-season as well. So you might see some of the more experienced competitors, or the Italians in particular, who train here more regularly, starting to find the foothold options that other athletes might struggle to find.
Just to keep you up to date with the scores, as ever, of course, in lead climbing, the name of the game is to get to the highest hold you can, and your score reflects the number of the hold you reach. So Elan of Canada currently leading the way, 31 plus in the men's. Of course, we're only on our third climber in the men's and women's competitions. And Naoki Shimatani on 25 plus. Over in the women's, Kyra Condi, early high point of 23 plus, and Claudia Gasolfi 3 moves behind her, 20 plus. And so far the climbing in perfect sync. Shinichiro on the left on the men's route and Risa Ota on the right. Not quite onto the upper section of the wall just yet. Just to give you an idea of the profile of the wall here in Arco, we have a gently overhanging first 5 meters and a short roof that both climbers are currently on now. And then goes back to gently overhanging and then really kicks back, and as I said, actually goes past horizontal and starts to climb down back towards the ground at one point. And then resumes at the very top with a slightly overhanging top, and it's a long wall here. It's quite high, very spectacular, awful long way to go. We're expecting time to be an issue here. It is a long wall, perhaps not as long as some of the walls we've seen in the past. Imps springs to mind, but still a long wall, and the climbers will definitely have to consider time.
Yeah, I was just talking to Campbell Harrison here, just as Charlie was going through the motions there, and Campbell, you were just suggesting that the time is really going to be a limit here. This wall is the same length as it was in previous years, just 6 minutes to climb. You think that it might be some timeouts?
Yeah, in particular in the men's route, actually, I think there's very different styles between the men's route and the women's route. The women's route is quite power endurance-y. There aren't so many spots to shake out once you get through where our Japanese athlete is now, Risa Ota. So, but as with the men's route, there are lots of little crimps and screw-on jibs and that sort of thing. The men are taking it quite slowly, shaking out a lot. So a few more of the endurance athletes, maybe Sebastian or Domin, potentially be seeing some timeouts on that. It's quite long, and like you said, we've got 2 minutes less to climb in a semi-final than we would in previous years.
So we just lost our third athlete out in the men's. It's Shinichiro Nomura. Good effort for him, but a very similar position, falling, as we've seen early athletes, into the initial slope, as they seem to be working well through the crimps, and then just as we could turn our attention to Risa Ota. She's putting in a good fight here so far. Great support early here in Arco. Nearly 30 degrees in the arena, but it's not stopped the crowd from filing in nicely. Risa Ota then burning a lot of time up to this point. We will try and get a clock for you on the screen. We currently do not have that, but she has 6 minutes to climb this semi-final route, trying to progress through to 8 finalists. 26 semi-finalists down to 8. Incredible flexibility there, really using that to her advantage, taking a little bit of weight off the arms, but you can see she's pumped early on.
You can see there on the small screen, Martin Teklers of Germany. They had a good semi-final yesterday. No Jan Hoyer, but Martin through, along with Sebastian Halenka, Christoph Hanke and Alex Megos. Risa Ota climbing superbly here. Not made a final yet this year. 12th last time out in Briançon. The highlights so far. A lead at this early stage here in Arco. Out next in the women's competition, it will be Delaney Miller. Looking forward to seeing Delaney climb. As we watch Martin Teklers of Germany, first of 4 German athletes in today's semi-final. Still low on the route, just heading up to the first steepening. Just watching as well, I can just see out the corner of my eye, Risa Ota. Ruefully looking up. I wonder if she's slightly disappointed, still studying the moves down on the ground. Too late now, we shall see. Extremely strong men's and women's field. As Martin Teklers pulls onto the slightly overhanging wall. That's the first small roof done. He just has another one just above him now. And then it's a 6-meter burn up to the very steepest part of the wall. And I just mentioned her, bottom right of your screen, there is Delaney Miller. competes in both bouldering and speed, as well as lead climbing. Real all-rounder. In the next 3 years, with the Olympics on the horizon, all-rounders are going to be coming to the fore more and more in climbing. Delaney well positioned.
You do wonder with the Olympics coming up, like Charlie just mentioned, if some of these rock superstars who we're starting to see coming back into competitions, people like Alex Magos, wonder if the draw of the Olympics is something that they're interested in as well, and they're going to get their competition shoes and outfits on and come and compete in the competition as well. It's really, really brilliant for us to watch. Oh, just a slight slip there from Martin Tekles, managed to recover it nicely on the slopers, thought his leg was going to get trapped behind the rope for a second. Recovers it nicely, and that's one of the skills of the competition climber, is to make mistakes but being able to recover and not burn energy. While just having one or two technical issues here currently with the microphones, we are working, and just as Martin Tekles has an issue on the wall as well, up into the shoulder for the left hand, didn't quite have the body tension through the left hand side, couldn't put the weight through the left foot properly, sucked some height out of his move. And that was the end of his semi-final round, and realistically at this stage that's probably not going to be enough. Chatting with the route setters earlier, they feel like the routes really do build up steadily and it starts to get very, very serious at the top of the wall, and this round it's all really about, number one objection is to get the finalist list, so getting 26 down to 8. So it's all eyes on Delaney Miller at the moment, just towing down on the right-hand side. You can see her actually, it's quite interesting, leaning her knee against the wall to try and find quite an interesting rest, a bit of a frog position. Not seen that tactic employed too many times. Good use of the knee. Delaney Miller just having a look up, stretched. That was a good burn from Delaney and Campbell. We talked about the Americans coming through, lots of American athletes in the semi-finals here.
Absolutely, I think they had 7 women in total and 5 of them have made it through to the semi-finals, and then they've got Sean Bailey as well in the men's, so really exciting to see. It's really funny, we don't see too many Americans on the World Cup circuit in previous years, and now they're sort of starting to come out of the woodwork and build up their experience. They're a really, really talented nation, and I think with more World Cups under their belt, we'll start seeing them more often in the finals and more often in the podiums, and maybe even some winners. Athletes like Brooke Rabatu and Margot Hayes have been showing really, really good promise over the course of the season, and Sean Bailey's come really close to the podium before, so I think they're a nation to watch for sure.
Masahiro starts his fight on the left-hand side then here in the legendary town of Arco. Masahiro's had a good competition season so far. Some really good results leading into Arco, so he'll be a climber who's on form, potentially qualified a bit low for his liking. Let's see if he can improve that going through this semi-final round. Campbell, just as we have a look at Masahiro, we talked a lot before we came on about the modern style of route setting, the aesthetics that plays a huge part in what they set, and when you've got a backdrop of such as Arco and the mountains all around, the climbs that these guys set these days tend to not only be the perfect routes or aiming to be the perfect routes for the competition, but the style and the aesthetic seems to play a huge key, and definitely as we go through to the finals later, they've put on some really good looking challenges with a lot of modern holes, a lot of modern volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really important spectacle for the crowd that the routes not only split the field, but they also look really nice. You know, you want to set that anticipation from the beginning, that the audience wants to see these routes climbed, because if you look at the wall and you just see a bunch of little crimps and that sort of thing, it's not that exciting, then you might have a little bit less enthusiasm going forward into the competition. So it's really important that for the spectacle side of things, that the routes are cool to look at as well as serve their purpose.
and I'm sure these routes will definitely do their job. I think the route setters have really ramped it up. We can actually see the finals routes are currently on the wall, but obviously we're concentrating on the semi-finals for now. But the spectacle is really there throughout the competition. I would say they seem to have done a really, really good job. And Adam Pustelnik, the head route setter, is known for that as an element of his route setting. But at the moment, it's Masahiro fighting on the left. That's where we lost the previous climber, Martin Tekeles. He does well to secure the shoulder. Just loses the right hand but manages to stay on. That's really good, and I do wonder if the friction on these holds is already starting to decrease as the temperature rises. Said he has had a really good 2017 leading up to Arco. You can see on the left hand side of the wall the route setters have ticked that hold. That is one of the first examples we've seen of that move, and it was an early crux move. The route setters have ticked a bit of the left hand direct. There is no hold round there as far as we can tell, but they have ticked it so that the climbers toe hook with the left foot and work their way round the volume. Initial hard move about halfway up the wall, but it's at the moment it's Hannah Schubert who we're focusing on the right hand side.
Hannah Schubert, of course. We've seen her in the commentary box and finals already this year. What a year it's been. Best of both worlds. Bit of commentating, bit of finals. I know what she'd prefer though. If she doesn't make the final, she's generally not a happy bunny.
No, definitely not. But I think she's happy to be in the semi-finals, and she knows that even if she qualifies low, she's a strong climber, she can push hard. I think she's really good at that semi-final style where you really have to fight from the ground. So hopefully this will be good for Hannah. It's a nice power endurance-y route, that sort of thing, so I think it'll suit her well.
Well, I think one thing the Austrians have got going for them as well is this new centre in Innsbruck. The people describe it as the best climbing wall in the world. Time will tell if that's the case, but basically everybody in Europe seems to be gravitating towards the centre in Innsbruck for training, and yes, it's a good burn from Hannah, and facilities like that for the Austrians have got to put them in a really good position going forward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree that the gym in Innsbruck is, as far as I've seen, the best route climbing gym in the world. The training facilities for lead climbing are really, really outstanding, and that's where I've been spending my trip, and even from just a month there, I've improved so much. So we'll be seeing lots of Austrians and lots of other nations as well that have been sort of gravitating around Innsbruck, doing really well in the competition. It's quite a tall wall, and there's a very high density of difficult routes, so you get those gains really, really quickly, and it really translates well onto a World Cup level, especially at a tall wall like this. These routes are very similar to the training routes that you'll be finding in a gym like Innsbruck.
Hannah fighting as ever. Never be accused of a lack of effort. As I said, I don't think she puts too much pressure on herself, but she is disappointed when she doesn't perform, and by her standards, that's not great. She certainly won't be in the final.
It's quite an interesting move there. It looked like Hannah was a little bit stretched through the body going round the left-hand side. She almost ended up jumping for the hold, but the volume itself pushed her body quite far out from the wall, and I do wonder if that's going to play a part later on for the smaller athletes.
I'm not sure. I think there are a couple different options as to whether you're shorter or taller. And I think Hannah maybe just had a little bit of trouble choosing which one to use. That said, they often have that circular volume there, and it's generally really hard to move around when you're climbing through it.
So it's Hans Buhmann then on the wall, and I do apologise if there's been any technical issues with the microphones. I'm pretty sure some of them have melted in the sun already this morning. It's been super, super hot, but we do believe we're back in the game as it were now, so do apologise if there's any issues with that. And we are now 100% working and focusing on the competition. So Campbell, Hans Buhmann, you must have seen him on the scene, competing against him yesterday. As an athlete, what's he like?
Oh, I've been competing against Hannes since I started competing internationally. We're in the same youth category. I don't know the guy too well personally. I only met him officially this year. He seems like a really nice guy, and he's definitely a super talented climber. I think he's climbed V14 in almost no time at all, and a super strong route climber, really consistently making the semi-finals, and I think he's climbing really well in particular this year. So hopefully we can see a good show from Hannes and a good placing.
So Hannes Puman then working his way through this second lip, looking good, but this is the move that the other athletes have struggled. He's blowing his cheeks out a little bit, but manages to stick the shoulder.
And a super powerful athlete like Hannes is probably going to like a section of wall like this. It allows him to really show what he's got, pull really, really hard, and hopefully push up in the rankings compared to maybe some of the more endurance-based athletes. But then he's got to have the juice left to pull through after he gets into the roof.
So he's working his way up to the section where we lost Masahiro. He's really using the toe hooks well there, finding a really awkward looking rest, but making him work for him. It's incredible how he's managed to rest in that position, considering how steep the wall is. It's the tick on the left-hand side of the wall there that the route says to put in. He moves his left foot up to it now. Really seems to use his height as an advantage here. Hannes Puman making really good work, pushing into a new high point here. Great power endurance. Sticks the right hand with relative ease, but is fighting hard. Thought he'd be in trouble there to get the clip, but he's doing really well. And here we go then, the first athlete working his way into the roof section, and we're starting to see this semi-final build really nicely.
Yeah, elbows are up in the air, but he seems to be recovering nicely. He's got a few more moves left maybe. Ooh, but not quite. Lost the feet through that roof section and he was straight off, but he was definitely fighting.
That was a really, really good battle, and you could hear the scream as he came off all the way from where we are, hundreds of meters away from the actual competition. Well, that was a really, really good moment early on in the semi-final.
We've got Claire Burfind on the wall as well from the USA.
It's just another look back at this move. He went to fire the left foot, but realistically he was absolutely gassed by that point.
And I'm very happy to say, back at his first World Cup, although we have seen you setting elsewhere in international competitions, but his first World Cup recently. Adam Pustelnik, welcome back to the stream, first of all.
Welcome. I'm happy to join you guys.
And we're just watching Claire on the women's route. What have you made of the attempts so far?
Now the question would be from my side. You mean men or women?
For the women.
For the women right now we're talking. It's more or less what we expected. I mean, the beginning of this route is not so much more difficult in terms of physical difficulty than the blue route of the qualification that was there for women, but it is a little bit more complicated. It's got a bit more of heel hooks, toe hooks happening, and especially in this part where Claire is coming up, we could see Rizauta having to really heel hook deep as Claire is doing right now to be able to get to the next hold in a clear and stable position. She has a bit of an advantage of being taller, but the route itself in physical difficulty does not get much more progressive than it gets from the moment when the green ball is. So right now with what we're seeing, it's more or less something we really expected, and well, I hope that I hope that the physical aspect will make the best climbers, the better ones going out after, climb higher and higher.
Yeah, excellent effort there from Claire. We're yet to see the really steepest part of the route, but superb effort early on in this semi-final. And in the men's route, we just saw a fantastic attempt from Hannes Puman. I saw you applauding a couple of meters away.
Well, I was applauding because I've seen Hannes fighting really well in Campitello, for example. And if he gets into the flow and manages to keep the flow, he is a climber that can perform really a great performance. And I mean, you could see him a little bit not so sure and not so confident with the moves lower down, but as he got into the mode of fighting for each hold, it turned out it worked very, very well. So for this, it's very good. Just an important insight for these routes is we have, as with the qualification round, in this profile of the wall, we have an inverted roof, a roof that goes first a little bit up but then down. And this part of the wall, we try to keep it a little bit more simple, a little bit more basic, so that the route just goes through this part, because you don't see it very well as from the spectator side. It's really hard to make something interesting and not too complicated to read, because if you start playing with this part of the wall, looking from the bottom, it's really you need a lot of 3D imagination to figure out what's happening in this part. So it's just an insight of what will be happening after as we get more people into this really steep and the roof part of the wall.
So you're trying to bear in mind that the climbers have not very long to climb a long wall, and you're just trying to ease them into it almost.
And that's as well the fact of this part of the wall. But I mean, if we start to get it complicated, you begin to have a lot of moves in the roof, and we need to get through the roof fast. Just bear in mind that the wall itself is 15 meters high, but if you take the rope and go from the bottom to the top in a straight line, it goes 22. So there is a case that, and it's not just for the limit of time, it's just for the fact of the spectacle, that it's nice to keep it a little bit faster. It's nice to keep it going simply all the time.
Okay, Adam, we'll let you get back to watching. Thanks for talking to us, and hopefully we can speak to you a bit later.
Thank you. We'll hope to see you later, guys. Enjoy.
So it's Marcello Bombardi on the wall at the moment, the Italian who won back in Chamonix earlier on this season. So this is going to be a great opportunity to see if we can get somebody nice and high up on the wall. And Charlie, Marcello's had an interesting season. You've been following quite a lot. You've had a lot of chats with him. Just his mentality has really changed throughout the season as we've gone on.
Yeah, it's something we've discussed a couple of times, and he's a climber I've enjoyed getting to know this season. I knew of him, of course, last year, but this year he's really come to the fore, and you and I have talked about it in a couple of streams already this year. That win in Chamonix has just transformed him, and it just makes you wonder what the mental side of climbing can do as we watch him fighting up. He is now heading towards the roof. That green volume is just below it. We mentioned it. I'll resume in a second about his mentality. For right now, it's pretty much purely physical for Marcello. It's power endurance, hard move after hard move. And he is now heading for the very steepest section of this Arco wall. You can see it there. The panel above the one he's about to reach is the one that comes back towards the ground. And then there's one that's pretty much horizontal, and then it begins to kick back again. But a brutally physical section coming up, but Marcello doesn't quite make it.
It's such a shame too. He looked really strong through that section. The other athletes had to use the toe hook, and he looked fresh. He just pulled through, but maybe a little bit too quick jumping through into the steeper section. I don't know if those crimps are so good, and he just kind of missed it by the tip of his fingers.
Yeah, we're just having another look back then. And realistically, the size of the holds here in a semi-final at the World Cup are so bad, and if you're not the percentage sort of quality you have to be on each move, if you're just a little bit off, it's just not going to happen on that sort of move. And yeah, couldn't match what Hannes Pumann high point, and Marcello Bombardi just looking up. Realistically, very, very disappointed. Could not perform in front of his home crowd here in Italy.
Mori Yoshimura, we just saw her very briefly in the women's competition, fell relatively low down. We'll update the score, but she won't be taking a final place. Katerina Kiprianova of Russia is out. Yeah, just quickly to resume what I was saying about Marcello, it's transformed him, his win in Chamonix. He then made the next final, next time out, and suddenly he's in a whole different mindset, and it makes me wonder what a really good result could do for any climber, really, because often you see when people are training, a lot of the climbers have been in Innsbruck in the amazing new facility they have there over the last week. A lot of people have a similar horsepower to the guys who are winning, and perhaps it's just that breakthrough mentally that can make all the difference.
Well, I think, just going to see on the bottom right of the screen, it's quite relevant because someone who's had exactly that, the young climber from London, Jim Pope, representing Great Britain, he has been in exactly the same position where he's had he's come into the scene, he's had a few results that he would have expected to get some more out of, but then has a really, really good competition now in Briançon and is back into another semi-final. Jim Pope finds his second semi-finals.
Yeah, absolutely. He, last year he was climbing well, but not exceptionally, and then he had a couple of good routes and he's trained really, really hard. Obviously, I've been climbing a little bit with him in Innsbruck, and he's definitely looking super strong this year. And I think now that he's starting to find his feet in World Cups, I think potentially in future years he could be among one of the best for sure. Really interesting style of training from Jim as well. A lot of athletes train a lot of endurance, but Jim says he, in his own words, he trains like a boulderer for lead competitions. Lots of finger strength, lots of one-arm pull-ups, trying to get that maximum power going so that when he does get pumped, he has the ability to fight through.
Well, I think what's interesting, you know, where he grew up training is where I work at the castle in London, and there's not really any facilities as tall as this, as steep as this. So it's a really good one for you guys at home who are thinking, you know, I just don't have that sort of facility I can train, and it proves, and we've seen it time and time again, especially with the Russian athletes, that you can get really, really good for competition climbing without the most amazing competition wall.
Absolutely, and I think Jim employs a lot of those little tips and tricks of the trade to try and maximize his training. So lots of weight and like high intensity stuff on the hangboard, and there's like a really steep training wall down at the castle and making lots of use of that. And it's all about using all the facilities that you have to the best of your ability and to the best of their potential.
So Ekaterina on the right hand side there, representing Russia, quite a slow start to her competition. Struggling with the difficulty of the bottom section, but still fighting well. This is where we lost Hannah Schubert, but sticks it nicely. Good work with the right heels on the arête. It's one of the key features of the wall here, is making sure that you use every single element, whether it's the 90-degree angled rete or the features in the wall, alongside obviously the holds and the volumes themselves. As we heard from Adam Pustunik, so many heel hooks going to be employed here in the women's route. Jim Pope just coming up level with her on the wall as it stands. I was going to say, Campbell, one of the interesting things here is the wall is they're climbing side by side on identical profiles of wall, obviously different routes, and gives us a really good perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool to see them both progressing up at relatively the same speed, you know, move by move. Jim's making really, really good use of his feet, moving up the yellow route, which is really cool. You see him being really careful, getting his weight through his toes. Really powerful move coming up though, but he sticks it, looking a little bit pumped. And Ekaterina, not to be for her, but still a good point on the route, I think.
Just lost Ekaterina there on the right hand side. She looked like she was going really well, but stalled out very rapidly and seemed to go from sort of 0 pump to 100% pump in just a couple of slopey pinches. Jim Pope's really fighting well now. Uses his mental skills nicely here, finds the arête and finds some comfort in that. Just proves, Campbell, how hard this section is through here.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's really interesting trying to use his knee up on that volume. But just a little bit too stretched out, I think, through that section.
Yeah, you can tell he was in a desperate position there. Like you say, went for the knee, kind of, if all else fails, stick a knee on. Just couldn't quite get it on. Like you say, get really stretched across the shoulders, stretched across the back. Really hard to maintain the tension on those really bad holds in that situation.
Yeah, all is fair in love, war, and climbing competitions.
So that's not going to be enough realistically for Jim Pope. He'd be back to fight another competition, but you know, great, we mentioned it already, great for him to even get through to the semi-finals here. And a couple of Americans out next. It's the legend already at such a young age, Brooke Rabatou and Sean Bailey.
Yeah, two interesting climbers actually, these two. Brooke almost seems like an old ham compared to Ashima all of a sudden. Worth remembering, we only saw her for the first time earlier this summer in 2017. Sean burst onto the scene last year. Not as easily recognisable as before, the long locks have gone. Do confess, when we made our highlights a couple of weeks ago in Briançon, I didn't recognise him from the back without the hair.
No, absolutely. I remember looking at the wall and being like, wow, that American guy looks like Sean Bailey. And I was like, oh, it is Sean Bailey. He just doesn't have any hair anymore.
We were looking through the footage for our highlights and I was saying, this new American guy, he's strong. I need to find out who this is. All made sense when he turned round. Still, yes, the newly Sean Bailey and Brooke Rabatou on the wall. It was all Japan before, it's all Team USA now. They did have a good day yesterday in the qualifiers.
Brooke Rabatou then 10th last time out at Chamonix, 13th in Briançon. She actually came 9th in the Boulder World Cup out in Vail earlier on this season. So yeah, a real all-rounder already at such a young age. And yeah, Brooke's just so impressive to watch and comes from an incredible heritage of climbers, competition climbers. I'm sure Brooke will be leaning on that experience of her family, her mum and her dad, who are kind of coaches as well as awesome athletes on their day.
she's got a really amazing style, Brooke Rabatou, and I think that definitely comes from having a lot of climbing experience in her family. She's been climbing her whole life, and she just looks really well practiced on the wall. Everything is executed so perfectly.
Campbell, what do you think it's like? We've got Ashima coming out later, also from Team USA. Two really, really young athletes. Ashima basically classified as one of the greatest rock climbers of all time. 16 years old. To have her as part of the Team USA. Oh, just as we lose Brooke there. Just going to say, what's it like having Ashima come into your team? But it doesn't seem to have worked for Brooke. I wonder if she's feeling any competition from Ashima coming in.
Probably. I guess they've been competing in the same youth category their entire lives. Since they were, little kids. So I'm sure there's a bit of competition there. But, they're both super talented climbers, and competition's really what it's all about in the end.
And you can see, just as we focus back on Sean Bailey, we were talking about it earlier, Brooke Rabatou searching for one of the features on the wall to stand on. That wasn't a screwed on or bolted on foothold, it was just one of the features, and it just seemed to be not enough for her to progress through that next move. And really unfortunate losing Brooke early on in the route, and it's all eyes on Sean Bailey then. And these routes, it just seems to be, the footwork seems to be so crucial in these heel hooks and toe hooks. Yeah, just if the athletes use them, but they've got to find them in the first place, you've got to find them quickly.
Absolutely. The subtlety to World Cup climbing is that it's more about foot sequences than hand sequences, especially on semi-final routes where it's so difficult. It's really, really important. Every move you have to change your feet position, change your hips, make sure that you're driving the whole way through your body. Because if you let one little thing slide, that can be the end of the route, like we saw with Brooke. She kind of lost her balance and barn-doored off the wall.
So Sean Bailey moving into the section where Jim Pope started to struggle. See what Sean can do, joining the competition in the semi-finals here in Arco. It's Evgenia Kazbekova, one of the real potentials for the future, a really good all-round climber. And just as we lose Sean Bailey also on that section, going back to the Ukrainian athlete, here we go, Kazbekova, just awesome in lead, awesome in bouldering. A pretty good result, I'd say, out in Munich for her just last week. And really, really handy on the speed as well. So Evgenia will definitely be one of those athletes to watch for in the future. As we have Marcello Bombardi straight off the wall.
And Marcello, great effort on the wall, but perhaps not the performance you were hoping for in front of your home crowd.
Yeah, I'm not completely satisfied. I didn't feel very good physically, and where I fell was quite pumped, but I still had some energy. But yeah, I didn't feel very good, and also for the head, I was not totally concentrated on the climbing.
Why do you think that is? It's an interesting thing to say.
I don't know. Maybe I just not in the best shape like I was in Chamonix, and this affected also my climbing, and maybe also the warmth weather. I couldn't really breathe as I wanted to.
Hey, well, it was great to watch you as always, and there's more World Cups to come, so we'll see you very soon. Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you.
Just focusing on Kazbekova here, that's the foothold that Brooke Rabatou was searching for and ended up using but slipping off. So Evgenia Kazbekova then looking for the options for the right feet. Really seems to have stalled out. That's the foothold that Brooke used. You can see all the options available for the climbers. Oh, just barn-doored off. And Campbell, this is really interesting because usually the footholds are defined by where the route setters put them. They're usually a bright colour, and you can see them here in Arco, more like outside, you have options.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really, really tricky. I remember I had a particular clip on my qualifying route where I I knew that if the foot blew, I was standing on a part of the wall, and if the foot blew, I was off, and so it's really mentally taxing. So whilst you're having to look for the little subtleties in the wall, and the wall is so long, often Arco can be a fight as to who can keep focused for the longest rather than who has necessarily the most power or the most endurance. So it's another really interesting element that comes in that's different from other competitions.
So it's Risa Oto, 27 plus, leading the way in the women's, and Hannes Puman from Sweden currently on 35 plus, leading the way in the men's.
Yeah, Marcello Bombardi, just spoke to him then. Didn't seem over the moon with his performance, but still sitting in second place, and judging by the difficulties some world-class climbers have had on this route, only takes a slip from a couple of the higher climbers, and that might not be quite as bad a result as he's thinking.
Yeah, we've definitely seen it in World Cups previously. Some of the earlier athletes coming out thinking they've not had the best result, but then see climbers dropping like flies all around them. And you can probably tell by the noise in the arena. Italian has joined us. It's Francesco Vetterata on the lower section of the wall as it stands and putting in a decent fight.
And there's Margot Hayes, bottom right. Always good to see her in World Cups. First woman to climb 9A plus outdoors. She's had a up and down season and had an up and down day yesterday. Really not happy with her performance on the first route, and then absolutely crushed the second one to make it through into today's semi-final relatively comfortably. Interesting to see what she could do. Certainly a climber worth keeping a very close eye on, and someone a lot of people would enjoy watching the finals this evening. We shall see.
So it's Francesco. This is the move we've seen a lot of the athletes start to struggle on. We've seen a lot of them get through it, but it definitely must suck a lot of power out of the forearms and the fingers, because the last two athletes have fallen on the next section, Sean Bailey and Jim Pope. So Francesco really starting to feel the burn here. He's looking for the options for the left feet once again. Yeah, and exactly the same. Really tiring out through that section.
Yeah, absolutely, and keeping that tension. I don't know if flipping to the undercling was the best idea, because then he needed so much power in his arms and through his legs to come up above that undercling. Yeah, so I think it's definitely important to keep that down in the Gaston. Margot's looking pretty good at the start of the route. Like we said before, she had a little bit of a slip on one of her climbs yesterday, but then looked unstoppable on the next one and managed to top it out. So I'm really interested to see how she goes.
I think Margot Hayes, obviously she's the first woman to climb 9A plus outside on rock, and we've talked about this wall a few times already and the different features, and I think it may suit more of the traditional rock climbing style. So Margot Hayes made finals in Briançon with an incredible semi-finals performance, and yeah, that was the foothold that we've seen some of the other athletes struggle with. So Margot Hayes doing well so far, and yeah, as a tip for a finals position here potentially.
This is a hard move here around the round green volume as well. Margot seemingly in cruise control here, and right hand lands. This seems to be the tricky bit, getting past this green volume. There it is. The volume's just pushing you off the wall as you try and reach up with the left. Just trying to jimmy her feet round now. Not the easiest moves to do in a dignified way unless you've got hip flexibility like that, in which case looks pretty steady.
Margot Hayes can heel hook on anything. That's something I learned in the youths. if there's a hold, Margot Hayes will heel hook it.
Thomas Johan out on the men's route, bottom right. Looking forward to seeing him climb as well.
If you followed the Lead World Cups earlier this season, you'll see Margot Hayes out in Briançon, really with her semi-final performance, climbed very intelligently, found rest where other climbers struggles, and you know, the climber's got a long way to go here in a short amount of time, but Margot Hayes really has that ability to find those rests, really make the most of every single rest position. And in that World Cup, it was what made the difference for her to get through to finals or fall off in the crux, where majority of the other climbers did. But Margot Hayes then uses the rest, but doesn't spend too much time because she's only realistically halfway on the wall. She's got a long way to go. It's just 6 minutes to climb these routes.
That's it. And the wall starts off quite steep, so it's very easy to get tricked into resting too much too early. And then you get to a point where the route really starts to ramp up and you're already tired. So hopefully she's not feeling like that at this stage. Still looking good. The moves have been hard, but I think she's looking okay, and hopefully she can push through to a higher point on the wall.
Interesting feature of this attempt so far from Margot Hayes. She seems to be able to change the speed when required. You sense around that green volume that she was just slowed it down slightly. I wonder if she might have taken one or two too many rests. Only time will tell. She does seem to be able to vary the speed quite nicely. She's slowed down again here. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think she found that first rest because she felt like she really needed it, and then she came up to this next section and it's much, much better. And so maybe trying to recover a little bit more before the roof section.
Yeah, probably worth bearing in mind, although Margot probably won't be that aware of this fact, that Not many of the climbers have made a real dent, particularly in the upper section of the route, and Margot won't either. I was about to say, perhaps resting, taking your time and forgetting about the top and just getting as many moves in as you can might be a pretty wise tactic from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think her left hand just dry fired on that undercling, which is a bit unfortunate. She might have had a little bit more juice left in the tank, so I don't know if she'll be 100% satisfied with that. We can see on the replay now, it just kind of, she adjusts and it blows.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if Margot Hayes is either having a tough weekend or the route is really, really hard. But with 11 female athletes already gone out and fallen relatively low down on the route, I think we're in for a really hard semi-finals here. Thomas Jonas then has a look at this section where the previous 3 climbers have fallen. A couple of climbers, Hannes Puman, Marcello Pombardi got further than this. It's Margot Hayes who leads the way, you can see on the top of the screen there, but let's concentrate on the French athlete for now.
This is now the steepest part of this wall that Thomas Johan is approaching. It really begins to kick back here. His compatriot Helen Jenico is on the floor, bottom right. Didn't look happy yesterday after one of her qualifying routes, but did more than enough to make it through in the end. So it'll be all France. You see there the profile of the wall really begins to kick back here. The moves get hard, it's tough to keep the feet on. Power endurance kicking in.
Tomas is looking really good, really strong, fighting hard still. Took a nice rest before this section. And he takes the high point from Hannes Puman, only to fall as soon as he sticks the hold.
That is exactly where we saw Hannes Puman fighting to find the left foot that his toe managed to dig into. Interesting to look at the scores to see if he actually made forward progression on any further holds than Hannes. Definitely was in a bit more control in that situation. Let's have another look. You see he takes the rotation. It's exactly what this roof does to you. Spins you around. Didn't quite locate the foothold perfectly. Looked like he was pretty gassed at that point though. Helen Janico out there. French athlete, 11 finals made in 2014, so let's see what 2017 can do for her. 16th out in Villars. First World Cup of the season. Oh, and an early fall. Once again, we're seeing athletes really struggling here in the semi-finals. Arco, it's just, I do wonder if the weather is playing a part here. Pat Campbell, you competed yesterday, equally as hot. What's it like? Do you think certain athletes are really starting to struggle in the heat?
Absolutely, I know. Some athletes in particular struggle more than others. I think some of the ones from some of the cooler countries. It's definitely a struggle. I find more so even in the warm-up area than the climbing the routes themselves.
Well, we are very close to halfway through the semi-finals, and we will get a cleaning break. One of the route setters goes up and makes sure that holes are as clean as they possibly can be. That possibly may help on these slopers and larger holes, the pinches. But yeah, a lot of people falling early on the route here. I would have thought by now we might start to see some climbers higher up on the routes.
Yeah, just to reiterate what you were saying about the heat, it is the hottest day we've had here in Arco, certainly since we arrived on Thursday, and the route setters have been here all week, and I believe this is the hottest day they've had. The wall is in the shade, but it really is roasting today. I heard rumours of 35 degrees. Not the easiest conditions to climb in.
I think we have a storm coming later as well from what I've seen on the forecast. I think at about 2 p.m. it's supposed to start rolling in, which at the moment I'm struggling to believe. It's kind of clear, perfect blue skies, but I mean, we'll see. The weather can take a turn.
Well, after what happened in Munich when we had that unbelievable storm, and when we were on our way back to the hotel we saw a BMW and the driver probably needed scuba equipment, it was that buried. That was a write-off. Anything can happen. That arrived absolutely out of the blue. As you say, it's a perfect blue sky right now in Arco, but it could certainly change quickly. I haven't seen the forecast with the storm. I'm slightly nervous now.
Yep. I've seen it for the last few days, and the fact that it's still there and they've got a time for it. I don't think it's supposed to last very long though, so hopefully it comes and goes quickly.
Japan and Switzerland on the wall right now. Catherine Chung, you can just see her bottom right. Still very low on this women's route.
Yoshiyuki, then the third Japanese athlete out of 6 to make the semi-finals. Team Japan, a very steady performance here in Arco. Once again, we've seen that throughout the lead season, really, and in the bouldering. Obviously, they've dominated the bouldering scene, taking the team overall win there. Team Japan really starting to engage in the routes and starting to perform really well, consistently well as well. So far, so good here for Yoshiyuki. Heading into getting very close to the roof section, and this is good work. We saw a couple of the athletes make use of this rest, using the toe hooks. Brilliant session. The route setters have made it very obvious where they want the toe hook to move. It really makes it clear that this is a tricky move, that the climbers seem to be reading it relatively well. Just as I say that, he drops out the left toe hook, puts it back though. Yoshiyuki takes the cut loose nicely, and he's looking in a lot more control than we saw some of the earlier athletes at this stage. This could be our first opportunity, someone getting through the roof section.
Yeah, interestingly enough, though, climbers have got here and suddenly begun to blow up. These moves on the tiny crimps just above this huge green volume are clearly absolutely desperate. He's making the most of, I struggle to call this a rest, a pause perhaps might be a better description.
Good close-up of exactly how bad these holds are, what they've got to deal with. Huge stack of moves to get into this section, and like Charlie said, the roof is exactly that, just really sucked it out of you instantly. And the route setter's off to our left, starting to look slightly concerned, but got a lot of very, very big names to come. There will be a cleaning break after the Swiss athlete Catherine Chong. So far so good for her. No issues today, but very slow up to this point.
And as we watch here, we've got Margot Hayes alongside us. Margot, just talk us through these moves we're watching now.
These are a little bit tricky. You have to be careful on your feet. This route has some lower percentage moves down low, which I think can be a little bit intimidating for the climbers, for the athletes, but the route was really beautiful, and she looks like she's able to rest a bit, so hopefully we can see her get up high on this one.
And how did you feel about your performance today? You didn't seem too happy when I saw you just now.
Not super happy about it. I think I could have done better, but you know, that's competition climbing, that's learning and stuff. I have a few changes I'd like to make, so I'd like to evaluate what went on there and how I can improve next time.
And this next section that we see Catherine on now, just before the steepest section of the wall, it looks as if it begins to get pretty physical pretty quickly.
Yeah, it does get physical pretty quickly. There's a pretty big move out right. But I think she's going to do it. She's looking strong, so I'm rooting for her.
Okay, you heard it here first. Margot, thanks for talking to us.
I think what? Sorry.
Thank you for talking to us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Always good to hear from Margot. As we think Catherine Chung, this is a very controlled, composed attempt so far. Excellent day for her yesterday in the qualifiers. Almost made it into the top half of the semi-finals, only missed out by 1 point, and just comes off with the right hand. That was the move Margot just mentioned then. I think Margot's got a future in media. That was perfect, but yeah, great effort from Catherine Chung. Excellent weekend for her in Arco. Out comes Fedor Samoilov, while the women's route will receive a clean. The women slightly ahead. We've already had 13 female climbers. We're on to our 13th male climber. So the women slightly ahead in the sequence, and they will. The route setters will now clean the women's route.
So Fedor Samoilov, 20-year-old from Ukraine, ranked 14th this year after a fantastic result, third in Villars at the start of the season. Wasn't so good for him out in Chamonix, 26th. And a very early slip in Briançon in the semi-final for him, but he seems to have got over those demons. He actually fell off the second move in one of the semi-finals earlier this year, so Fede seems to have regained his composure and has not made the same mistake twice. And Campbell, I mean, it's the worst case scenario for somebody to fall off really, really early on a route.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's really unfortunate, but it happens sometimes, and it happens to the strongest people. You know, the start of the route in particular, it's really easy to make mistakes because you're still a little bit nervous. You've stepped back, you've looked at the route, you've got the whole picture in your mind, and it's that first moment where you have to bring it from the big picture down to the small and really focus on each individual move. And so you haven't quite gotten into the flow yet, so it can definitely be tricky to pull on and be 100% perfect with everything straight away. But you know, once you get a few moves up like he has now, you start getting into a better headspace, you're more focused, you've drowned out everything around you, you can just climb.
I think it's really letting the body take over at that stage and go through the motions, go through what you do best, and that's climbing.
Absolutely.
So we've already seen some athletes out in the men's competition who have had great results already this year and failed halfway on the route, so we're really looking to see somebody starting to push higher. We've only seen people get into one move into the roof so far, and Fede Samoilov is a long way off of that as it stands, but watching him in Villars was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he was so strong where other climbers really struggled, and it was so hot there as well. So maybe Fede, just as I say that, falls early on the route. This route is really taking no prisoners. Fede Samoilov also down early. Very, very hard semi-finals here and not very big scores.
Let's have another look at Fede then, fighting through this section of yellow volumes. It's the left hand that went. Just ruefully looking back up.
I think Fede would have expected a lot more out of that performance. He really, really seems to fall so early, and it's really I just don't know what to say. It's just everyone's struggling so much here in the men's and the women's, but we are only 13 climbers into the 26 climbers semi-final, so we've got a long way to go. Certainly got a lot of talent to come, and we've talked about some of the climbers who we can expect to see later on. Also, we've got some of the competition's legends in the men's category: Ramon, Julien Poublanc, Domen Skoffic, Jakob Schubert, Stefano Gasolfi, then Ramon de Grange, obviously a few wins for him this year. Also, the legends from the rock climbing game: Adam Ondra, Alex Magos. Obviously, Adam Ondra also the world champion as well. Let's have a look at the women's results then. It's Catherine Chong who leads the way, tied with Margot Hayes and Reese Ota, 27 plus, and we've seen that is 2/3 of the way up the wall. Thomas Jones then 36. French athlete Hannes Puman, we talked about him quite a lot, 35 plus, so he did secure the extra move, secured the hold that Hannes Puman was heading for, leading the way to 35 plus. But Campbell, we've got to think that those scores are definitely not going to be enough to get through to the finals.
We never know. I'm not going to make any calls just yet. The routes are hard from the ground, so anything can happen. Some of the top athletes might get nervous as well, so that can come into play. Seeing who will go through to the finals. Maybe Thomas Johannes might sneak through. We'll just have to wait and see.
A wise man hedging his bets. Well, as the routes are cleaned by our route setting team, that man there down on the left, Adam Pustelnik, we grabbed a word with him yesterday on one of the cherry pickers. So we're just up here on one of the cherry pickers. Not my favourite place to be, I should add, but we have to get the cameras up here somehow. And we've got Adam Pustelnik doubling up as camera mounter, chief route setter and cherry picker driver. You can do it all. And we haven't seen you at a World Cup this year, but you have been setting elsewhere.
Well, as route setters, we're being appointed to different competition with the IFSC calendar, and I've been route setting for the European Championships in Campitello di Fassa, not far away from here in fact, which was a really good event, and it was kind of a pre-beginning of the season event because it was just a couple of days before Villars. And then, I've been since 5 years route setting for Chamonix, and this year I haven't been to Chamonix because there was the World Games competition held in Poland. And I was living in Poland in exactly that place, in Wrocław, for 1 year just before October this year. And I've been busy with that stuff, setting and kind of in the organizing part of it. So I was doing these two comps, and this is in fact my first World Cup this season, which doesn't mean it's the first international comp this season for me to set.
And the last time we saw you at a World Cup or a World Championship was Paris. I think it'd be fair to say that was a big success. What can we expect in Arco this week?
Well, I hope we can expect things which are getting really close to Paris, but I mean, Paris was such a special thing, and we did repeat a couple of times that it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and so many aspects come together to create such a great event, but it does not mean it cannot be repeated. And Arco is definitely one of these places that has, I could almost say, like a heritage of sport climbing competition, and it is the place where if you want to pull off big things, you can definitely do.
And just quickly, we're about to see Alex Megos, we're about to see Adam Ondra back in action, and Ashima Shiraishi is here. Should be a fascinating weekend.
Well, I mean, like, we were taking the laugh yesterday that it's the clash of the titans, you know, but it feels definitely like this. I mean, if you look at the World Cups, Villars, Briançon, Chamonix, the stake has not been that big as it is right now here in Arco. So it is a special event, and well, this group of competitors, well, I'm not sure if we're going to see it this year afterwards, you know, so you guys have to watch it, you have to tune in live to see it.
Great plug. I didn't pay him to say that, but Adam, thanks a lot for your time, and I hope the competition is as good as you say it will be. Yeah. I'm sure it will be.
Hey, thank you very much, guys. Enjoy, and really do hope my words will come somehow, you know, fit the reality, and in 2 days I'm not going to be ashamed of what I was saying here.
The stress of the route setters. Excuse me, Adam Pustelnik in action there, left-hand side of the wall. Campbell, we were just listening to Adam then saying he thinks he might eat his words. Doesn't seem to be so far, but the route setters have definitely given these climbers a major challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. The routes look really, really hard. I think anything can happen really at this stage. Some of these later guys coming out might get a little bit nervous, a little bit thrown off by the difficulty of the moves from the ground, and so that can really change things about who might make it through to the finals. We might see a couple of the early birds coming through. Thomas Johannes is looking in a good position to maybe sneak through, depending on how some of these other guys perform, of course.
Yeah, of course, the route setters, we're always talking about the fact that they have a hard job, and I hope it don't sound like a broken record, but I do want to reiterate just how hard their job is. But it's never more so than in these league competitions, because if you look at the women's, for example, you've got Janja Garnbret, Anna Verhoeven, Jane Kim, Mina Markovic, Jessie Pilz, maybe Julia Chanaudy, but that group, particularly the first three, are perhaps just breaking away slightly, and they might just be on a slightly higher level, and it's so hard for the route setters to not only set where you get 8 finalists, everyone feels like they get a good go on the semi-final route, but also then to separate climbers, particularly when you've got 3 or 4 who are, as I say, possibly that slightly higher level. I think this lead, particularly in 2017, particularly hard to set for, and also in the men's competition. We've got Adam Ondra back, we've got Jakob Schubert back, we've got Alex Megos, not a bad outdoor climber, Romain de Grange having the season of his life. It's early days in this semi-final. The routes look hard, but there is a long way to go.
Well, I think factor into the mix the fact that they've got 30 degrees plus to deal with. They've got to make the routes look good. There's Adam Pustelnik's the first time he's set on this wall. There's so many variables that they have to deal with each time that they come to a competition. It's one of the hardest games out there.
We've certainly been fooled into thinking in the past that the route setters have slightly overcooked a route, and then the semi-final progresses, and suddenly it's almost top, even closer to top. They come thick and fast, so it's early days.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the first things I sort of realized coming to World Cups versus viewing them on the stream, is that at some competitions those top 5 guys can just be so far ahead of everybody else, and especially in the women with those top 3 ladies. It's crazy. You'll think a route is super, super hard, and maybe it's never going to get a top, and then it will get 3.
And it's not just in the women's top 3. As I mentioned, Mina Markovic, she's been up and down, but very much at the business end of the World Cups this year. And Julia Chanaudy, we've still got Jessie Pilz to come. She's had a monopoly on 5th, as I mentioned in the qualifying highlights. Finished every World Cup there this year. It's where she finished qualifiers yesterday. So the route setter's got quite a field to set for, that is for sure. And there they are on the wall, Adam Pustelnik, who we just spoke to, on the left. I hope the fact that I go in a cherry picker doesn't go unappreciated. I can assure you I'd really prefer to do these interviews on the ground. It always feels like they're going to fall over to me. I'm assured that something to do with physics means they won't, but
Just want to mention, as we have a look on the screen, you can see the sun beating down on the wall. The wall is in the shade, but everybody around the arena just in this cleaning break taking the opportunity to move to the shady spots, and anywhere there's a crane or a speaker stand or a tent, everyone's huddling into the shade behind it. Saw some people running their heads under the taps trying to cool their children off. It's really, really brutal heat to have to compete in here.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying before, in particular warming up, you know, you're on the wall for 6 minutes at most, so it's okay to sort of put the heat aside and go with your roll. But doing a sort of potentially up to 2.5 hour warm up for some of the climbers, it's really, really taxing.
And as we watch part of the route setting team clean the routes, Remy Sama, you were the chief route setter in Villars. You're working under Adam Pustelnik this weekend. The routes look super hard today.
Yeah, for sure. We this was a choice of the chief of Adam to have some harder semi-final to have a good ranking at the end. And in this case, we will be able to take some risk for the final, to have tops in final, because you know. When you plan to have one tops, maybe you can have 2 or 3. It's not so easy to have exactly one top, so it's better to have a good ranking in semi-final and to be sure that we can have very, very spectacular final.
And for people who might not know how it works with route setting, how do you split the routes? Because you have to set the qualifiers, the semis and the finals. Does each route setter take one route, or do you do everything in pairs? Just explain how it works for people at home.
Yes, it's not always the same, but in general we start by the final and we always walk together. We are always 2 in the lift to walk because we can share our ID. And after, when one team of 2 people they finish to make the routes, after everybody climb the routes and walk to make some adjustments, and like that after we speak a lot and we change some things, but we always start first 2 setter in the lift, and first the final after the semi-final. Here it was a little different. We start with the semi-final and finish with the final because we were waiting for very beautiful holes in final. You will see.
Okay, we're looking forward to it. Thanks for your time.
No, thank you to you.
That was Remy Sama. He was, as I say, the chief route setter in Villars, this time in Arco, working under Adam Pustelnik. Often when you talk to the route setters, they'll say it's kind of a theory who the chief setter is. He might steer the direction, the basic theory, but these guys are vastly experienced in their own right. There's no one who's the boss as such. Yeah, someone has to make the big calls.
There was a couple of really interesting points there. One was that I love the fact that they've just waited for the delivery of awesome holds ready for the finals. We talked about the modern style and the aesthetics and how important it is for the routes to look good. So they set the semi-finals first whilst they're waiting for the finals holds to arrive. And also the fact that he said Adam Pustelnik, it was his decision to make the routes hard, and I think that's a bit of a theme of Adam Pustelnik's route setting. He guaranteed the result through the semi-final round. It's so important. We've seen issues early on in the season with Chamonix with things being too easy. You know, time will tell with half the athletes still to come out.
And also we have count back to previous rounds, but we have had it where time has been an issue, and that's not really what lead climbing is all about. So getting a separation, at least at some stage in the competition, ideally you'd like it in the final, but if you can't achieve that, making sure you get a good separation somewhere, absolutely vital.
Yeah, I just want to point out we've had a little bit of a change in what the scores were from what we saw previously.
And I have to say, Campbell, when we were off camera, you called this, so I'll give you a bit of credit.
Yeah, so Margot Hayes, absolutely, Margot Hayes has been scored with a solid on hold number 28, so that puts her in first place ahead of Catherine Chung and Risa Oto, who fell at 27 plus. So I think that's going to be a big difference going forward into the final. Maybe not the top 8 cutoff, but for sure, having stuck that move, I think is going to be a big difference for Margot.
Yeah, when we were watching our video of Adam Pustelnik, Campbell said, I think Margot was solid on that hole and called it absolutely spot on.
So Japanese athlete then Yuki Hada starts us after the cleaning break, and Mathilde Becerra.
Really cool to see Mathilde back in the semi-final. She had a super unfortunate round in Briançon. I think she finished in the 40s somewhere. So it just goes to show how cutthroat lead climbing competitions can be. It's often considered to be a lot more stable in terms of the rankings than bouldering, but There are definitely times where things can go wrong. You can have a bad route or 2 bad routes, and but nevertheless, we can see she's still on form and climbing well in the semi-finals here in Arco.
So this is where we saw Brooke Rabatu and Evgenia Kazbekova from Ukraine struggling a little bit through the foothold options, and she's sort of backhanding the right hand undercut there. She needs to flip that and get the right hand round. Fires up for it anyway, doesn't use many of the options out on the right arête. That was a really impressive show of power there from the French athlete.
Need to clip the quick draws in sequence as well. It was a bit of an awkward one down at her knee, but she got it done. And these are physical moves, and they're quite long moves around this green boulder. It looks a really awkward section of the route. Tealed okay so far. It's this big move up with the left. If you fall short, it's very hard to stay on, and she just makes it. Nicely done from Mathilde. Full commitment. You've got to go for that one with everything you've got. Can't leave anything on the move before. You've got to give that one the beans. Yuki Hada, meanwhile, slightly lower on the route. The climbers started at roughly the same time. Still relatively low on the wall, though. Awful long way to go. When will we see a climber pierce the very upper section of these routes?
Mathilde having a bit of trouble with that technical section that Margot was talking about. You've got to be careful on your feet. She tried to down climb. She's looking for rests basically when there were none. So yeah, a bit unfortunate for Mathilde.
See then Yuki Hada, just have a look then, this is what Campbell was saying, just seems to be looking for the options for the hill there. Suffering, you see the left hand just slide down the pinch there. Do wonder if the temperature and the conditions have had a part of that. I was going to say Yuki Hada, huge amount of strapping on the left knee. He's had a fantastic season so far. 5th in Villars, 3rd in Chamonix and 2nd in the World Games, but another early fall, just lining him up for a big send on the top wall, and he fell. Yuki Hada will be disappointed in that, and you do have to wonder if that strapping on the left knee has had any negative impact on his season, on his weekend.
Yeah, Yuki does speak some English. I will try and find out about the knee. Ashamed to say, despite having been there twice, I can't ask him in Japanese, but we will try and find out for you. So there is Salome Roman of Briançon of France.
Always a crowd favourite in the World Cups, I find. She's so small, so much smaller than all of the other girls, and so she's adopted this really dynamic style of climbing, and so it's always really exciting to watch Salome.
Oh, she's great to watch, yeah. Full gas.
Absolutely.
Gives it full gas, gives it everything she's got. And it was a conversation we had quite a lot last week in Munich. Jan Hoyer won the competition. He topped a boulder where height, there's no doubt about it, was a huge advantage. And very sportingly in our live interview, Jan said, well, maybe I wouldn't have won if the boulders were less suited to tall people. And as he rightly added to that, he never complains when they don't suit tall people.
It's interesting, yeah. I think for every boulder or every move that suits a tall person, there's 3 or 4 more that suit the short people. Being a taller climber myself, I don't complain when there's a move that suits me, of course, but I definitely look at a lot of the World Cup routes, and the feet sometimes they just don't work, and I have to find a new solution that some of the other climbers don't necessarily have to worry about.
Yeah, and as I said to Jan at the time, over the course of a World Cup, a season, a career, it evens out, so take your victories when they're offered.
I think if anybody at home is new to climbing, it's easy to think that climbing is about reach, and the taller you are, the easier it's going to be.
Certainly is when you're my height.
I would say if you ever get a chance to come to the World Cup, you'll see when you look at the athletes just how many small athletes there are, and the ones dominating the sport right now tend to be some of the smaller athletes. But like you said, Jan Hoyer, Adam Ondra still to come out in the men's category, Ashima absolutely tiny, Laura Agora, so many height differences all through the field, and that was one of the elements that makes climbing really, really interesting.
Absolutely. No one can say climbing is easier for tall people and then look at the top standings of a World Cup.
Oh no, I'll still say it. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'll stick with it.
And I'll stick with climbing's easy for short people. It works for me.
We'll find out now. Salome Roman. Swinging right.
Swings right, but uses a toe.
Couple of moves below the large green volume and the black volumes above that, where we just lost her compatriot.
Just going to say swinging right, but opting for a right toe hook rather than using one of the indents in the wall. She had that with the left foot instead, but it obviously wasn't going to work for her. She's gone back for a reefing. This is one of the skills of the competition climbers, not getting flustered, heading back down, having another rethink, but with time so important, such a long way to go on the route. I think this is not the best situation for her, and she uses the right foot nicely, the feature on the wall there instead of the right toe hook. That was good ability to go back, have a reset and start the move again.
There's the large green volume for Salome. One we've talked about now. We were mentioning earlier with Mathilde Becerra, and we've said with a couple of climbers, it's a long way to the top end of that volume, and be interested to see if Salome finds a slightly different way of doing it. I think if she goes for the reach, it's going to have to be pretty much a jump for her. She is superb at figuring out slightly different ways of doing things. And I suspect she just needs to nail this move at the right hand first. Sticks that. I think this move would be interested to see how she tries this. Will it be a different method? She just pulls up some slack rope just to set herself. Going to try with the high foot.
Really good
Makes
effort.
it work nicely.
Yeah, you've seen some of the athletes doing the move off the right heel to get to the left hand. She ends up going front on with the left foot underneath the green volume. That really stretched her body around that green volume, as Charlie was saying. But this is a good burn, but she's really having to fight on this route.
So this is the technical section where we just lost her compatriot Mathilde Becerra. Margot Hayes mentioned it earlier. Salome taking what vaguely resembles a rest before continuing.
See a really good close-up to the left hand. Just as we said, she lost the compatriot. She slid down that left hand, really lost the tension through the left hand pinch, but no such problems for Salome.
Really smooth through that section, Salome Roman.
She really seems to have found her sort of rhythm early on into the midsection now. She was really struggled in the early part, but seems to have regained her confidence. See how hard that crossover move is. And we've seen one or two athletes, Margot Hayes especially, making the most of these two holds close together. And Campbell, you don't see that many options on the routes for resting when you've got two hands that are in cut like this together.
No, for sure, and it's mostly to do with the feet. I think the way that the foothold is positioned right at the edge of the volume means that you can lean into the wall and lean into the holds, and it almost makes it kind of like a slab. And so you can really get under those small crimps and take as much weight in your feet as possible.
Just to bring you up to date, we did lose Christoph Hanke. That's why we could see Sebastian Hellenga bottom right, and we cannot see Salome Roman anymore. That will be towards the top end of the scores at this stage, though.
And again, it was that move, the Margot sticking the 28, has put her above another climber, so we'll see.
Yeah, now let's have another look at Salome Roman. Campbell, you called the score for Margot perfectly.
Yeah, sometimes mistakes just happen with the judging. It can get written down wrong, that sort of thing even. But yeah, she took number 28 and then she actually fell as she was adjusting number 27. And so there's no real way that you can argue that she didn't have control of 28. Yeah, and sometimes it's just an administrative error and it all gets fixed up as time goes by.
Yeah, it certainly does. That's why we've got judges and not robots. There is an element of judgment to make in climbing.
Absolutely.
Salome, that will give her 27 plus.
Sebastian Hellenga on the wall then. If you saw the coverage in Briançon, you would have seen he really had a disastrous finals, really didn't get much more than the second quick draw. He said he went away, had a month between then and now to kind of get his head together, get his climbing back together. He said he was really suffering with his skin, so Sebastian Hellenga will be absolutely out for redemption here in Arco, really wants to put his name back on the leaderboard.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard him talking in ISO saying that he's actually taken a little bit of time off of training. He's climbing a lot, but he's been climbing outside and really just trying to relax and get his head right. And he said training starts after this competition, but he just needed that time off to really refocus and be able to use his form to its fullest potential.
You do have to wonder what he's thinking then when he's going through these moves. Is he fighting like a rock climber, or is he he's got those demons hanging over him from Briançon? But you know, if most climbers got through to the final, they'll be pretty happy with that. But I think he's been so consistently performing well throughout 2016, 2017 that for him, last place in the finals was a near disaster.
Yeah, I think he needed a bit of a mental reset. He doesn't take it well when he loses. On the flip side, of course, when he won in Cran, you probably celebrated until about Christmas. Man who wears his heart on his sleeve. A real crowd favourite. commentator favourite as well. If you've been looking at your notes or whatever else and you suddenly look up, you're never in any doubt who's on the wall. Long may the red mohawk reign.
On the bottom right of your screen then, it's Tina Johnson Hafsars representing Norway. Good season for her, and we're into the top end of the women's competition and the men's here. And in the women's, she was one of the groups who got found a top in the qualifiers. So yeah, not too many tops in the qualifiers, quite a lot on Route 1, not so many, I think it was 4 on Route 2. So Tina Johnson had a good qualifiers yesterday and is one of that elite group to find tops in the qualifiers. And Sebastian Helenke is off then early on, struggled to find his feet. Another bad competition result for Sebastian Helenke, and like Charlie said, you never really in doubt what he's thinking, and I wouldn't want to be near him right now.
Yeah, really sketchy route for sure. It's definitely really hard for the men, and I'll be really interested to see what the finals cutoff will be with athletes like Sebastian and such coming off so early on the route. Nevertheless, Tina's looking good. Coming up to the first crux on the women's route, I find Tina a really inspiring athlete. She spent a good period of maybe a year or more quite unwell, and now she's come back. She's in super good form. She's topping qualifiers, competition after competition, made the finals in Chamonix. So it's really cool to see climbers being able to bounce back from injury. You know, as athletes, we all go through those times where we struggle with injury or illness, and it can start to seem a little bit dark or like it's not going to go so well. But obviously, she's an example that shows if you persevere and you keep going, keep training, you know, things can start going your way again.
Yeah, she really seems to be a crowd favourite, potentially for exactly that reason. Made the finals out in Chamonix, came 4th, so she's on form once again, and that is really good to see. Campbell, I want to ask you, we've seen just in the lower section how important the feet are through that section. They're using the features of the wall. How indented are those inbuilt features?
They vary. A couple of the insets, so the little discs, are quite good. You can stand on them quite confidently. Most of those little divots and such are basically just smears, so you're not going to rock your weight over them or anything like that, but they can, you know, give you that little boost when you're smearing, or maybe just help you position for a clip or that sort of thing. But, you know, they're not enough. People often say that maybe Arco local climbers have an advantage, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. The smears are so small that it's not going to make the difference between who wins and who loses, but it's definitely it definitely can help you get into a body position to maybe make a move a little bit more precise.
On the bottom right, you can see we are joined by the Spanish legend Ramon Julien Poublanc. Just an absolute veteran in the game, been competing for a very long time, taken away a lot of medals in the process. So let's see what he can do here in Arco. Rocking the trousers, which is a bit of a surprise. He obviously being from Spain, doesn't get affected by the heat too much. Just concentrate on Tina for now.
Yes, she's heading up to this, what's proven to be the key move at this stage. We saw Salome Roman fall there just a second ago. Tina lining it up, just trying to figure it out, taking her time. It's as if she knows instinctively that this is a crucial section of the route. That small black hole immediately to the right of the quick draw has so far, there it is, proved to be the high point. I think she could be about to beat that.
Throughout Europe. Ramon then, on the left hand side then, this is where we lost Sebastian Helenke, an early drop through these slopers. We've said it time and time again in this stream, I do wonder if the heat is playing a part on the sloping holes. Polyurethane as well, possibly playing a part in that as well.
Ramon's looking really good though. Whether these next few powerful moves will suit him, I'm not sure, but as far as his current form and level of endurance, he's looking really fit. A super long, super powerful move, this next one, but it looks like he's going to try and cross through, and somehow he's made it work.
That was crazy. The first climber we've seen go through with the right hand dropping the knee shows kind of what form he's on and how strong he is. Maybe he had a look at and read it as that because of his height, felt like he couldn't go up with the left hand. This is a good battle here.
Yeah, no, that was really, really creative and a really good example of why we see some of our smaller athletes performing so well. I think they have a level of creativity that some of the taller climbers don't necessarily need to have. And so you can see him making some really, really interesting movements through some of the tougher sequences that the other climbers just don't see.
So it's been a while since we've seen a male athlete get through this tricky section of toe hooks. Saw Jim Pope employing the knee on this next move. You see Ramon's just a bit short of height there, can't reach up to the jib on that next hold. Has to use alternative options for the right feet. Ramon in a bit of a struggle there. It's been really impressive. He gets through. Oh, Ramon, Julien Poublanc, the legend from Spain, just seems to come up short on height rather than strength through that section. Really goes back to the conversation we were having about the climber's height, and we can't help but think he just couldn't quite reach the jib on the bottom of that hold.
Yeah, for sure. He almost got his right foot up, but it just wasn't quite to be, I think.
Another disappointing result from Ramon then. It's a real shame to see someone who's done so well, especially here in Arco before.
Molly taking a little bit of a shakeout, which some of the other climbers didn't necessarily see before pressing up into this difficult compression section. But she's looking really good, looking really strong.
Molly Thompson-Smith then, the current British lead climbing champion, really starting to perform on the international stage. Also found a top on Route 1 in qualifiers and a score of 42 plus on Route 2. So Molly Thompson-Smith having a really good weekend out here in Arco. Molly's actually won competitions before on the international stage. It was the European Youth Climbing Championships in IMS 2014. It's really good to see the climbers coming through from the youth and starting to perform well also in the Senior World Cups. And we see it time and time again where climbers do well in the youth but struggle to make that leap into the seniors. But no such issues for Molly this year. Seems to be her year. So just a couple of move off the current high point.
Finding a rest that some of the other climbers didn't see as well. She was looking pretty cruisy, pretty fresh, and now looking a little bit pumped actually, trying to find some rest through this section, but hopefully she can stick the next move. Interesting, opting to try and go through that volume first. But still really strong. One more move.
Oh. That was a really good burn there from Molly. She really seems to have a deep level of endurance. That was really impressive. Just trying to find rests. We have an opportunity now to meet with Norwegian climber Tina Johnson-Hafsars.
Tina, we've just seen you down off the wall. You said you needed a couple of minutes just to cool down. Conditions and the route look very difficult.
The route was pretty physical, like big moves, high feet. But it was really good. It's like really cool holds and really good style, I think.
And happy with your performance? You are in the lead.
Yeah, I think Molly just passed me, but...
Sorry, I couldn't see Molly.
Okay. It's good. I'm happy with my climbing, but I still think I could have a better fight. But it's okay, it's good.
Why do you say you could have had a better fight? Do you think you read the route wrong or was just too tired? What happened?
In this sequence, I felt like we were a bunch of girls reading to match this black volume. But that was pretty bad, so you just had to like go past it or like not use it.
Well, hey, it was enough for first place. I'm not sure about Molly Thompson-Smith. We'll let the viewers know in a second, but go and enjoy a gelato and a bit of shade.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
So it's all eyes on Hanwoo Kim at the moment, and just there, drops into the bottom right of the screen, one of the moments we've all been waiting for. It's Ashima Shiraishi, 16 years old, starts her World Cup senior level competition career, and yeah, basically one of the greatest rock climbers of all time at just 16 years old. This is going to be a very exciting moment. I know a lot of people in the arena are really looking forward to this, and I hope you guys are at home.
She's climbing super quick to start, which is interesting. Maybe she got a little bit pumped in the qualification, or maybe she had some time issues. But yeah, she's off the ground really fast.
So Ashima Shiraishi then, born in 2001, just 154 centimetres tall, put in a really good performance yesterday, topped the first route, fell off the last move of the second qualifier. Getting really nervous now.
You are?
Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting moment to see Ashima. Good to speak to Tina there as well. Very interesting insight. My apologies, I hadn't actually seen Molly Thompson-Smith at the time, but Tina, absolutely right. Molly had done enough to take the lead. Actually, on countback, they're on the same score, 28 each. Ashima Shiraishi, though, this is a moment a lot of climbing fans have been waiting for. Seeing Ashima in a Senior World Cup, and just an interesting feature, slightly amused me when I was reading up about Ashima last week, getting my facts together. When you go on the IFSC website and you click on her previous results, the only number that appears is the number 1, because she was the World Youth Championship winner in lead and boulder in Arco in 2015 right here. Repeated that in Guangzhou 2016 in November. Some of you might remember that. Campbell Harrison was there with me in Guangzhou. So she's never finished an IFSC event in anything other than first place.
She's actually, yesterday was the first time she's fallen on an IFSC route. She's never fallen at the youths, and I'm pretty certain she's never fallen at the Pan Americans. She generally doesn't fall at the US comps either, but I couldn't say with certainty, but definitely that was the first time she's actually come off of a route. So at least it's good to see that even the best rock climbers are being challenged on international level competition routes.
Yes, very exciting to see Ashima, the youngest person of either gender to climb 9A at 13. Absolutely extraordinary climber from New York. Japanese descent.
Yeah, it was Hanwol Kim. Unfortunately, the attention was all on Ashima there. It's quite interesting. She's just checking her watch, but it was Hanwol Kim who struggled through that section. We're seeing so many climbers, exactly where we lost Ramon as well, but it's all eyes on Ashima right now. If you were off getting a cup of tea and you can hear this, come back and watch Ashima. Let's see what she can do.
Charlie Bosco, Mike Langley and Campbell Harrison here, all glued to the screen. As I say, a lot of people have been waiting a long time to see what this young lady can do in Senior World Cups. Looks superb in the qualifiers. I was chuffed to bits to see Ashima Shiraishi's first time in a Senior Lead World Cup yesterday in the qualifiers. I think that could be a good claim to fame one day.
I think Ashima, if she does well here today, she'll be challenging the likes of Jane Kim for the smoothest, most controlled climber on the scene, and that really seems to be her style. Just takes her time, takes it all in. Really to see her stretching out the forearms on the waist there. This is one of the rests we saw. Margot Hayes, also from America, making the most of this rest, but time is going to be critical.
Yeah, she's looking really good, really fresh. You can see a really interesting type of hip flexibility she's got there, where she's able to turn her hip inwards, which again brings her even further into the wall, and she's able to push down onto that foothold a little bit more effectively, and really milk those two crimps, which are in reality probably quite small. I wouldn't imagine they're much bigger than a fingertip or half a fingertip even, but when you've got feet like that, you can really press under them and get a good shakeout.
Here we go then. Ashima Shiraishi moving through the section close to the high point. She's got to go a long way up and right now. Molly Thompson-Smith currently leading the way with 28, which was just secured just 2 holds above and moving through the next section. Ashima just stalled out a little bit here.
Well, time hasn't been a factor of any climber so far, because this next move has stopped our best climbers up until this stage. What can Ashima do? Tries a slightly different method, now needs to commit with the right hand. Sticks that, will she swap the feet? She's just trying to think about it, and again falls on that same move. Something of a stopper move, it would seem, in this women's route. I can't help thinking that anybody that can progress past that move will be in the final.
Yeah, a bit of a deafened silence in the arena here at the moment, apart from the local MC. Everybody a bit surprised, potentially would have thought a bit more out of Ashima there, and fair play, 16 years old, her first ever Senior Lead World Cup. Can't help but think we'll be seeing her for a very, very long time to come.
Yeah, it's a difficult one really, because there's a lot of other athletes here, and Ashima's only 16 years old, and I don't think it's fair or right to put all the attention on her, but people were excited to see her. It's the first time in the Senior Lead World Cup, and up to that crux move.
Yeah, she looked like you need to get that hold, as we saw with Molly and Margot, as a Gaston with the right hand. She looked like she got the top of it as a crimp. Obviously there's not much on offer up there for her, and yeah, just seemed to have the hold slightly in the wrong position. But another incredibly strong and also very small climber, Laura Rigora from Italy. She's very famous around these parts already. such a young age. She's going to start her campaign, and we're getting really into the meat end of the competition now, and yeah, still 28 is leading the way.
Yeah, Laura's really exciting climber to watch, I think. She's super tiny, but man, she fights so hard. I was watching her train in Innsbruck, and she'll look pumped at the 5th draw and then continue on to the 12th. And just, yeah, every single move she's trying as hard as she can. Every time her fingers close on the next hold, and she's always giving 100%. I think that's why she performs so well at a World Cup level.
On the left-hand side then is Kichiro Koranaga, just 21-year-old. Currently placed 3rd overall this year in 2017, 10th out in Briançon. Won the World Games in Poland. Putting in a really good fight here, and this is where we've seen so many athletes struggle. It's been a while since we've seen anybody get through this hard section of slopers, compression on the arete. Also stretched there, but that's what Ramon couldn't reach. No such issues for Koranaga. A lot of strapping on the right arm there, but doesn't seem to have affected him through this first half of the route. Struggling now. Once again, we're seeing athletes struggling halfway up the wall. Only a couple of guys so far got into the roof section. Campbell, really, really tough semi-finals here with only a handful of climbers still to go.
Absolutely, I think, yeah, it's funny, we weren't so sure about Thomas Johannes and Marcello Bombardi, but so far, I don't know, it looks like they've made some pretty good progress on the route, and we might even be seeing them in the finals.
Great to see Laura Rigor out in front of a home crowd. The number of teenage sensations in women's lead is absolutely unbelievable, and this is very much one of them. Laura Rigor made a final in her first ever World Cup. How she would love to repeat that here in Arco.
And how she stuck that move, that was incredible. Huge pounce up there, feet completely cut off because she's too small to keep them on. Pouncing through this next section, this is a really good burn.
Laura Rigor is now the 8th to last climber in this women's semi-final. We can to begin to confirm finalists for you pretty soon. Laura through the relatively technical section. Flexibility not a problem. Couple of moves away now from what's proving to be the crux of this women's route. This is where we saw Ashima resting. Will Laura take the same option? She does.
So
slightly lower.
A couple of moves further then it will be hold number 28. It's Ashima, Molly, Tina and Margot all tied currently on that hold. So can we see somebody heading into the roof section here in Arco? Incredibly difficult semi-finals, like Charlie said, not too many athletes still to come, but yeah, still a lot of big names. We really hope we can see some climbers further up on the wall.
So climbers right now separated by count back, that hold 28 proving the stopping point. Laura Rigor, the next climber to attempt to reach it and pass it. Can we see one of the women reach the very steepest section of this Arco wall? The Italian crowd coming to life now. Laura taking the last rest she can before she commits to the move. Tries to drop knee with the right knee. Reaches it, doesn't like it, and she is off again.
That's exactly what we saw from Ashima. I think the height is playing a part there. Just looking for the options to go straight up with the right hand, finding the shoulder on the right hand. I think if that right hand hold was facing in a conventional direction, they'll be able to fire to it with a lot more ease. But as it stands, you've got to go to it quite controlled. That's what we saw from Molly and Tina, also from Margot. They ended up not making any further progression past that. But it really seems to be a stopper move.
Absolutely, I think it's all that, because you've got to hit that hold and then you have to press even further to be able to get more pressure on it. You have to stand up through your feet. And a couple of the girls have hit it expecting it to maybe just to be able to sit back on it or that sort of thing, and it's not quite happening for them.
So that gives it a score of 27 plus. 4 athletes tied on that score, so it's very, very close at the top end.
Max, meanwhile, looking in control on this men's route, and in the men's competition, he is the 7th to last climber to go. So again, we can start confirming finalists. We'll do that in just a second. We have some climbers who we know will appear in the final. And Sophie Koller of Switzerland, she's out. Yes, in the men's competition, Thomas Johan, we called it earlier, he will make the final. That is enough. Score of 36. Just a plus ahead of Hannes Puman. Thomas Johan, he will climb in the final. Can't be displaced from the top 8 no matter what this remaining climbers do.
This is what Campbell was saying earlier. It's quite interesting to see. At the time, we thought it wasn't going to be enough, but like you say, climbers have dropped lower and lower down on the route as the competition's gone on. You do wonder if that's to do with the heat or the texture on the holds or the chalk build-up, or just the fact that those guys came out and put in a really good turn.
Potentially a different style of routes between yesterday and today. This is quite hard, quite powerful, whereas yesterday athletes making the semi-finals were climbing into the final section, so 40 plus moves, and now they're getting tired at 20, 30 moves, so it's a very, very different style of route, and it favors a very different style of climber.
Let's see what style of climber Max Rudiger from Austria is then. He seemed to have bags of power yesterday. Just seemed to just keep on trucking every single move, just seemed to just go past it like it was nothing. It was really, really impressive.
Absolutely, he was really on form yesterday. He's been climbing really well this season actually compared to previous seasons, so hopefully he can put in a good one in the semi-final.
He's looking superb up into this point. It's been a while since we saw a climber at this section of the men's route. Now he's fighting through those small crimps. Approaching the very steepest section, the wall begins to curve back down towards the ground very shortly. You can see the effort showing. Still vessels in his head, popping out with effort.
Locking off really strong, looking really good, taking the time to place his feet.
He's getting right behind him, so's the crowd. They're putting up with the heat here in Arco. It must be 35 degrees. Imagine how Max feels coming through this steepest section.
Max Rudiger then in the classic Arco roof, spins round. That's what we pretty much see every single route on here. Seems to be in a real tangle. Oh, he just had his arms and legs all in the wrong sequence there, and that is what this roof does to you. Campbell, you were talking about it, saying it's really hard to read the sections through that roof. You've got to get really clean through there, otherwise you're in big trouble, and exactly what we saw with Max.
Absolutely, deciding exactly who is going, so which hand to go with, when to turn around is the biggest thing for me. Exactly, I find it really confusing. The configuration of the volumes can make it really interesting as well. Yeah, and he looked like he just got a bit tired, a bit tangled. You have to have so much juice to keep your feet on that roof after so much climbing as well.
Yeah, it was a really good burn from Max. Pretty sure that will put him into first place. It's all eyes at the moment then on Anne-Sophie Koller from Switzerland.
Again, we've also had another change in the scores, which this one I didn't voice, but I definitely thought it when I saw Molly Thompson-Smith with a 28. She's been changed to a 28 plus, so she did get positive movement, so that'll put her in provisional lead.
Yeah, it's a great effort from Molly. Just check the scores. That might put her into finals. That could well be her first ever Senior League World Cup finals.
That is her first. If she's in finals here, it'll be her first one, which is really cool.
So it's interesting, a few technical incidents in terms of the judging here that's leading to some interesting progression through the round. Obviously the team managers doing their job, keeping a very tight eye on the climbers, not trusting the score and going back to the officials to confirm their score.
And it's so important too to be aware. Obviously everyone's respectful of the judges, but you have to be on it. You can't just trust that what they deemed is correct. You have to know how you climbed and make sure you have coaches being aware as well, so you can get the score that you climbed for.
Well, and also it's worth noting that they do have their video cameras specifically for that, so they can go back, check the footage and make sure there's been no issues.
Absolutely, they want to make sure that all the scores are correct.
And Sophie Koller then, a couple of 9th places already this year, 9th in Villars, 9th in Chamonix. Should be looking to push past that position. Here we go then, this is the move 28, the right hand hold. You can see this is where we lost Ashima. And Laura, she sticks it nicely with the right hand. You can see the positioning of the right hand is so key. Drops the knee there, she's in big trouble here, but nearly sticks it, so that'll be 28 plus to tie with Molly Thompson-Smith.
Hopefully we'll be seeing some athletes pushing through that 28 plus move and into the roof, but I think so. I think when we start seeing climbers like Jain and Anak and Janja, of course, hopefully pushing through to the final moves of the route.
Okay, we'll just take this opportunity to have a chat with very special guest. We have Ashima Shiraishi.
Ashima, welcome to the Senior World Cups. A lot of people have been looking forward to seeing you. How was it out there?
I was really nervous because it was my first time competing with all the pros, but it was really fun. But I mean, today I looked at the climb and I was like, this looks really cool, and I was hoping to get to the roof section, but so I'm a little bit disappointed with my climbing, but it's okay. It's my first time.
Yeah, it was fantastic to watch you. I'm interested. You thought the route suited you when you first looked at it?
I mean, I feel like all these routes just look really cool, and I've never seen any of the holds because in the US we don't really have the same holds as they do over here. So I was just really excited to feel them. But it kind of looked like there were a lot of high foot placements, so I'm really into that style.
Well, awesome to finally have you at a Senior World Cup. Will we be seeing you at any more this season?
Yeah, I'm doing the Youth World Championships, and I'm also doing Edinburgh, so that Senior World Cup, and also the 2 in China.
Okay, fantastic. We're looking forward to it, and as I say, great to finally have you in a Senior World Cup. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
So great to hear from Ashima there. And one thing that was really interesting, she's saying it's so great she wants to be competing amongst the pros. And if she's not a pro already, I mean, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Yeah. The way that she looks up to the other athletes.
For sure, the standard is so high, and it's so easy to not fully grasp that from home. But when you come here and you climb on the routes, it's insane what these athletes can do.
Really shows the difference and the challenges the climbers face from going between rock climbing and competition climbing. It's Domen Skofic also falling early on the route. Domen's had a really mixed season this year, but this is not going to be one of his best rounds. And another climber standing on the floor, holding his hands on his hips, just wondering what went wrong. Let's have another look. You can see it's really crimping the sloper on the right hand there. I'm not actually 100% sure if there's something additional on that. See how bad the left hand crimp is. Struggled to find the foot option. It was the heel that went. The heel just slipped. Chalk build up on the sloper. Another poor result from Domen Skofic.
And here's Jesse Pilz, as I mentioned earlier. 5th in every World Cup so far this year, and 5th again in the qualifiers yesterday. Just maybe a tiny bit, a 1/10 of a percentage behind that slight breakaway group ahead of her, but she can absolutely challenge. Do not bet against her making the podium. And apologies if you're struggling with the sound slightly. A helicopter has just appeared over the venue. It's very James Bond. It's the yellow and red one. I do hope nobody is requiring a rescue right now. But yes, maybe a bit of noise pollution. My apologies. Here's a climber bottom right of your screen. A lot of people have been looking forward to seeing Alex Megos. He was climbing in Munich last week in the Bouldering World Cup. 7th place, just missed out on the finals. Of course, 7th place in lead would be enough. We take 8 climbers into the final, so that would be enough for Alex today. We shall see. Lead, you would imagine, more to his taste, particularly flash climbing as it is here. Not pre-rehearsed, these routes. The climbers are on these holds and on these moves for the first time, and that is a style you think will suit Alex Megos, the first person to ever on site 9A outdoors.
Jesse Pilz then consistently in 5th, as Charlie mentioned earlier on the show. Another one of the incredibly strong Austrian team. Slightly bigger than some of the athletes, but looking in really good form here this weekend. That's where it starts to get really interesting then. So many strong climbers still to come after Jesse Pilz. It's Mina Malkovich, Julia Chanody, Jane Keir, Manik Verhoeven and Janja Garnbrett. Get a feeling we could be starting to see some new high points on the wall. Alex Megos on the wall at the moment. Another rock climbing legend alongside Ashima Shiraishi, but also came 2nd in the European Championships in bouldering just last week in Munich. So it's really good to see Alex Megos on the competition scene.
Jesse's looking really good, really fit, hasn't really run into too many issues so far. She'll take these 2 crimps. I reckon she'll milk the rest while she can. And then hopefully we'll be seeing a high point from Jessie.
Does well to flick the left leg out there. You could see her just using the momentum, using the technique. Flicks the left leg out to find the stretch across to the left foothold. That was good thinking from Jessie.
Keeping her right foot down low though and not really shaking out for too long.
See, it's Alex Magos currently looking up and shaking out as Jessie Pills moves into that 28th move. Secures it nicely. He's got to find the feet now. Can we see someone push through this next section? That'll be enough to get into finals. And another climber drops going to the left hand.
And there's a blocker on the hold she's going for, so I think it's quite a small slot. And so whilst Jessie looked quite fresh, I think it's a really, really accurate move, and she just didn't have exactly that pinpoint accuracy that she needed there.
Gives us an opportunity to focus on legend that is Alexander Magos, representing Germany. So this is where we lost Domen Skofic. Magos has the right toe rather than the heel. No such issues for him. Crowd hold their breath in anticipation once again as another huge rock star graces us with their presence here in Arco.
Yeah, it's definitely a stacked field. We had 85 men in the qualifications, and I think 70 in the high 70s for the women. And so, yeah, super, super tough and super, super strong competition, which is really intimidating as a competitor, but also really motivating and exciting.
Magos.
The MC's really firing up now, giving Alex the build-up he deserves. He's heading on to the top section of the wall. They introduced Mina Markovic. All eyes for now, though, on that man right there, Alex Magos. He's heading towards the steepest section. He's battling hard. Tiny holds. Endurance, you would imagine, unlikely to be an issue, but you can see from his movements and the colour of his face. Face is bright red with the effort and the heat and the exertion.
Still maintains a perfect body position, perfect technique, a new high point for Alexander Magos. And we saw Max Rudiger struggling through this section. No such issues for Magos. Alex Magos takes a temporary lead and puts himself into the finals later on tonight.
He's looking too fresh. It's almost unfair. Like, yeah, some of the climbers were struggling so hard just through that roof section, elbows up, and like, yeah, he's shaking out. I think he'll get a lot back from this rest, and then hopefully he can push through the last few moves.
Now the MC getting behind Alex again. He gets ready to move. He's taken a decent break there. How much will he have got back? How much did he need to get back? As Campbell said, he suddenly looked refreshed coming through the roof, really struggling. Now he's onto the upper section. The feet cut loose. The crowd know what this is all about. They know they're watching one of the greatest climbers of all time. He reaches through with the left hand. Now he's having to fight. The route setters have given him a huge challenge. This is a man, of course, who on-sighted 9A, cannot quite on-sight this route here in Arco, but he comes mighty close and he secures himself a place in the final. If you enjoyed Alex's commentary last week in Munich, I'm sorry, because we're going to be seeing him on the wall, and that's where we'd rather see him. Fantastic effort from Alex Magos. Looked tired coming into the roof, seemed to get something back, and then suddenly the fatigue kicked in, the moves got harder, and he was spat off, but he will be in the final. He's done enough. The afternoon now is dedicated to recovery and preparing himself.
And the big hitters keep coming. It's Mina Markovic on the wall at the moment. Following in the men's category will be Adam Ondra. So tantalising here in Arco. What a brilliant field we have for you. Mina Markovic then showing her extremely consistent style. Just so strong, so athletic. Taking away so many gold medals in bouldering and in lead. Mina Markovic then have a little bit of a stumble here, just trying to find the right options. Really interesting there, she's flipped the left hand into a sort of guppy side pull, a wrap on that hold. She's got to find the right foot options. We've seen a few people struggling with this. It's where we lost Brooke Rabatu and Evgenia Kazbekova. She needs to just concentrate on the right foot now. She's really stalled out here. She's looking for options. She's really not happy with the match on the right hand hold. Finds the right foot now. This is good again from Mina, but she's taken a lot of energy and we lose her so low down on the route. That's a real surprise.
Yes, Mina, it seemed in 2016 that she was having quite frequent problems with route reading. Sometimes we'd get on a route, and a bit like we saw with Sebastian Halenka with his last performance, he was particularly unhappy with. As soon as someone gets on the route, sometimes you can sense they're not comfortable, and it seemed as if that was another one of those routes for Mina Markovic.
Mina's one of those climbers who's just so strong. Her lock-off is so powerful that she almost always feels somewhat stable or comfortable on the route, and I think when the route setters force a move that she doesn't, she really can sometimes struggle to adjust. And that's maybe also coming from her generation as well. She's part of that transition from a one style to the modern style. And whilst she's obviously done exceptionally well in adapting, I think sometimes those the old tendencies come back.
Well, I'm going to say it, we have the best climber of all time on the wall right now. I think if there were any doubts about that, they were taken away in Paris last September, the last move of the last route to win the World Championship. Doesn't get much better. He is a phenomenon, he is a superstar, Adam Ondra. Meanwhile, Julia Chanaudy is out. That means that we can confirm the top 4 female finalists at this stage. That will be Jessie Pilz and Sophie Koller, Molly Thompson-Smith and Ashima Shiraishi. She will climb in the final tonight. There are only 4 climbers, including Julia Chanaudy, so that top 4 cannot be displaced.
And how interesting in this, Alex Magos and Adam Ondra go toe-to-toe outside on who can on-site the hardest route, and here they are in front of us in Arco. Adam Ondra is the current world champion, takes his place on the stage. Adam Ondra won the Arco Rock Legends Award so many times here. He is an absolute favourite of the Arco town. Everybody knows him here, everybody follows him for an autograph, and it's Adam Ondra's opportunity to show what he can do. Can he surpass Alex Magos?
Alex, you look like you just had a battle. That route looked desperate.
Yeah, I was more desperate than I thought, to be honest, yeah.
And as you were going through the roof, you took a long rest. It looked like you recovered a bit. Just talk us through those last few moves.
I mean, the last holds were more slopey than I thought they'd be, so I thought when I was hanging on the roof, I saw that the next hold are not terribly chalked, so I thought, okay, I must have gotten quite fast, so I thought, okay, 6 minutes are not over yet, I'll take a good rest and then just try to smash as far as I could get.
And you look like you've had a hard workout. Conditions difficult on the wall right now.
It's very warm. I think it's probably close to 35 degrees, so you're just not even doing anything and you're sweating so much.
You're telling me. Well, you'll be in the final tonight, so go.
Awesome. Nice.
Yes, you're in the final. We'll see you there tonight. Best of luck. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much. See ya.
So it's Julia Chanaudy and Adam Ondra on the wall then. Good to hear from Magos, and always good to give them a little surprise, letting them know they're in the finals during the interview. Always good to get the instant reaction. It's Adam Ondra finds the toe hook, but he's really fighting all the way through this bottom section of the route. Proves how difficult it is. Adam Ondra currently after this competition heading off to try and climb the world's first 9C outdoors, and struggling a little bit on this route, but this is Adam Ondra, don't forget. He's got it all in the bank.
He's come into this competition with a lot of maximum power though. I know he was a little bit worried about his endurance, which is kind of key on a wall like the Arco wall, but nevertheless, I think he looks pretty good. He's, he's staying controlled. I think he's being quite careful and technical with all of his movements. Doesn't want to make any mistakes, but hopefully he's got enough juice left to really give us a show.
Adam Ondra just cuts loose in the roof and falls. Looks like may just be enough, it should be, but it's nowhere near Alex Magos' high point. Alex Magos leading the way so far with just 3 climbers left to come. Let's have another look. Gets the clip, but his right elbow was raised there. You can see how bad it was. Cut loose, missed the left foot, exactly the same as Hannes Puman, just fired the left foot. The left foot didn't stick, he was out there, and exactly that. But it's all eyes at the moment then on Julia Chanaudy, one of a select group at the top of the qualifiers to top both qualifying routes, so she's in fine form this weekend. 4th last time out in Briançon, heading up into this next section then, up into the 28th move.
Yeah, really good. She's secured the hold and just trying to get high enough to make this next move. Looking strong but pumped, and she's off 28 plus again.
So it's 28 plus for her, Jessie Pilz and Sophie Koller and Molly Thompson-Smith, Ashima Shiraishi, Tina Johnson-Hafsars and Margot Hayes on 28 going through in this round currently. With those scores, it can be really interesting to see where the split ends up being with so many climbers tied in the semi-final route of the women's. So with 3 climbers still to come, Jane Kim Anik Verhoeven and Jan Gambre. 8th place, the current cutoff, it's Laura Rigora. Just get that updated and see exactly where we are. It's Julia Chanody pushes. Just waiting for the up to date there. So it's, as we were saying, it's Julia Chanody 28 plus, tied with 3 other climbers also on 28 plus. So from one legend on the wall to another, it's Jane Kim starts her campaign, as we can hear from Jessica Pills.
Jessie, great effort on the route. It looks as if that hole 28 is the crux.
Really? I don't know. I don't know where the others fell, so...
It's all on the same section. Just talk.
Tire?
Say that again.
Tire?
No, not yet. You're in the final tonight, don't worry, but it looks like a really difficult section.
Yeah, it was pretty slippery and hot, and yeah.
And
I wasn't not that pumped, but the move was hard. So.
you weren't that tired up until that point?
Sorry?
Up until that move, you weren't super tired, you say?
No, there were some weird moves, like at the first small roof, but yeah, the slab was okay, and then this one move was pretty hard.
So what can you do now before the final? You just go and relax, try and find somewhere cool, because you'll be climbing this evening.
Yeah, we have air conditioning in the hotel, so I think I go for a shower and then maybe take a little bit of rest there.
Well, maybe when you come back you can bring it and we'll put it in our commentary box. We need some air conditioning. Good luck tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
So we've got Jane Kim on the wall on the women's semi-final route. She's definitely, not that I'm biased or anything, but she's probably one of my favorite climbers. I really like her style.
Yeah, lovely smooth style, as we know. Can she join the lady we've just spoken to, Jessie Pilz, in the final? Julia Chanody, she'll also be there. We've got multiple ties on 28 plus. Of course, the big surprise that we've just seen was Mina Markovic falling low down on the route. And Adam Pastelnik back with us in the commentary box. This 28 plus move on the women's route causing a lot of problems.
Yes, period. I mean, yes, well, it's not so much to comment on, you know. There's 2 moves in a row which are just on the level of being just too hard in a row. If there would be one move and something different than one move at the same grade, yeah, it would be okay. But there's 2 moves in a row which are just a little bit too hard, and they are a little bit harder than the moves before. And the route until that point, we could see other girls climbing, it's not a safe route. It's not a route where you can stop, look, shake out, take very short moves and really be sure of what you're doing. We saw Mina slipping and falling down very low because of hesitating a bit, not being sure on how to grab the next hold. So it's not an easy route up to that point. And then you get 2 moves, which are the first one is, first of all, it's a long move to a shoulder hold that you don't see so well, but it's a shoulder hold. I mean, the girls, obviously, they don't see so much. You could see Laura grabbing the hold, but not being able to readjust to get the shoulder on it. And then when the second move jumps in straight away, it's just a little bit too much. So not much to comment on this. I mean, like I just said to Mike, well, what I can say, well, a bit, I can always say, well, a bit sorry for the girls, but
it's easy with hindsight, though. I mean, will there be any adjustments you make ahead of the final?
It's a different round. It's a different game. It's a different route.
I guess it's easy to overreact.
Well, obviously, of course, this is the part of our game. You know, we're looking at the climbers. We're trying to estimate how they will act on a different type of climb and so on. And we always make adjustments. But the very, very important thing is to stay calm with whatever happens. You know, we know what was the feeling about this route. We knew what was the feeling about these holds. Well, we know more or less what's and how we would compare the final to the other climbs. So the first thing is stay calm, and of course we make adjustments. After each round we make adjustments because let's remember the goal of the semi was to reach like some high points on the wall, but the first goal of the semi is to have a separation. We will now make it well with the women, and we can see it, even though we have still 3 incredibly strong climbers to come. Ooh, that was interesting.
Yeah, fall there from Jakob Schubert, a lot lower than we would have thought. We're just focused on Jane Kim for 1 second. She's heading up towards that 28 plus move, as you'd expect from Jane Kim. Nice in control at this stage. She latches the right hand.
Put the left foot up, take it slow, readjust this right hand a little bit, yes. Yes, go faster a little bit.
And Jane Kim so close to being the first climber through that move. Adam,
we've got 2 more attempts. Huh?
We have 2 more attempts. Adam, thanks for your time. Very interesting insight. No need to overreact. It's a different game, different final. We shall see.
We shall see. Thank you very much, guys. Stay tuned. Hope you'll enjoy it.
Thank you very much. That was Adam Postelnik, our chief route setter here in Arco. And as he just said, they maybe had two moves in a row, 2 hard moves in a row. If it was 1, they might have got away with it. It's always a judgment, and it's not always 35 degrees when you set. I would add that. But yeah, Adam, quite right. We want to put on a show. We want the climbers high on the wall, but the priority is to get 8 climbers through to the final. If he can do that, I'd imagine he'll be halfway satisfied, but they may have a rethink about a couple of moves on the final. We shall see. I have to say the final route looks very different.
It's always hard to try and get the sort of route where the girls can't stop and shake out as well. And you know, when you set hard moves in a row like that, like we saw with Jain just then, she wasn't quite comfortable and she tried to stop and she tried to find a place to chalk up and to shake out, and she wanted the route to become easy and it just wasn't, and so she ran out of juice for the next move.
So with 2 climbers still to go in the men's, 2 in the women's, we get a really good idea of where we stand for tonight's finalists. It's Julia Shanodi leading the way with that score of 28 plus. Jane Kim, who also a 28 plus, will take a provisional lead based on countback. Jessica Pills 28 plus, and Sophie Collier in 4th will go through. Molly Thompson-Smith finds her first ever senior finals. And Ashima Shiraishi, currently sitting in 6th, has done enough. She will be through to tonight, and I'm sure everybody at home will be particularly excited to see that amongst all the other climbers. And it's Anak Verhoeven now then, and Stefano Ghisolfi, I should say, hit through the Italian, and the Italians providing great support here.
Yeah, we've been working on our Italian a little bit, myself and Mike. It's slow going, but we're getting there. Progress is incremental. So we can now confirm almost all the finalists. Actually, this is the second to last climber in the men's and women's competitions. That means that the top 6 as it stands are guaranteed their place and can't be caught. So in the men's competition, just wait for this. Alex Megos and Adam Ondra, Max Rudiger, Thomas Johan, Hannes Puman and Jakob Schubert, your current top 6. Alex Megos and Adam Ondra, huge names in climbing, but then people like Hannes Puman could spring a surprise. Ditto Thomas Johan. That is going to be an amazing men's final. In the women's, it will be Julia Shanodi, Jane Kim, Jessie Piltz and Sophie Collier, Molly Thompson-Smith and Ashima Shiraishi, Margot Hayes and Tina Johnson-Halfsafs watching nervously because they can be displaced, and you'd have to say on balance of form this year and last year they are likely to be displaced, but as we saw with Mina Milkovic, anything can happen.
And I don't want to be too hard on the route setters here, and it's lucky Alexander Megos has showed us the top half of the route of the wall, but a very disappointing semi-finals in terms of what we've seen on the top of the route. You know, we can't beat around the bush too much. You know, it's not been the greatest show in the semi-finals. We've seen some incredible athletes, but the actual routes themselves, they're doing a job, but it's been a bit disappointing.
Yeah, at the moment the difference between the athletes has been more or less how fresh they look before they all fall at the same move.
Stefano Ghisolfi, of course, he lives here in Arco, climbing in front of a home crowd, moved here relatively recently. It looks like he's struggling with this move. It looks like he needs a reset and doesn't manage it.
Stefano was really struggling with the left foot there. You could see the disco leg, as it were, the knee pumping up and down on the left foot. Stefano really struggled there, stalled out, looked to go for the flip on the left hand. That's what we saw Jakob do, and then fall off. We've seen a couple of guys flip the left hand, but Stefano Ghisolfi, a real surprise, falling really low down on the route. But not a million miles away off the final place. That's what's funny about it. But it's all eyes on Anak Verhoeven then.
Yeah, that whole section I think is all about how you work your feet over to the right hand side, and Stefano was really focused over to the left. He wanted that arete, I think, but he needed to bring his feet up a little bit higher before he had the reach and the stability to be able to do so.
So depending on how Anak and Yanya get on, it will be Margot Hayes who drops out of the finals position with a score of 28. Gives you an idea of what she's got to do to push into the finals. You can see Jakob Schubert just off to our right shaking his head. He is going through to finals, but looks particularly disgruntled about the men's semi-final route.
I don't know if he's necessarily upset about the route. I know he's been climbing outside mostly. I only saw him get back to lead training within the last sort of week or so before this competition. So, you know, I think he'd maybe prefer to have a little bit more raw endurance. But, yeah, maybe he's just struggling with the conditions a little bit. I can see him looking at his skin.
So the final climber out in the men's category again. It's Romain de Grange, winner in the last time we saw them out in Briançon with a fantastic finals climb. Anak Verhoeven then just below the next crux section on this route, or crux of what we've seen of this route anyway. Looking very, very calm and controlled at the moment. No obvious signs of being flustered. Let's have a look then. That is hold 28. Has a look at it on top, then searches around. Slight issues here for Anak Verhoeven. She's on to the top of that hold. She needs it as a shoulder, we believe, but has she got the power and the finger strength to get through? Needs to flip it into a shoulder. She's looking up at her options. She's a bit of a tangle with the feet here as well. Needs to get her left foot on. Anak Verhoeven in big trouble here. She's looking to go for it and falls. Anak Verhoeven
again at 28 plus.
Just before we see the final climber out in the men's end, we have Adam Ondra joining us in the commentary box.
Adam, welcome back to the World Cups. That was a hard route to welcome you back.
Yeah, luckily for me it was hard enough, so I didn't have to deal with too much endurance because, like, especially the right side of the wall here in Arco is like definitely my nemesis, and pretty much like in every single route except for the qualifier I always fall in the very same place, and it happened even today, except for today it was pretty good result. So
well, you'll be pleased the finals on the other wall on the left, but talk us through the route. It seemed like you can snap back into competition mode instantly.
I mean, if I trained much more endurance I think I would feel much more comfortable. So like the first half of the route below the roof felt quite comfortable, and just the section just below the roof I made a few mistakes, but unfortunately I found my own beta, and in the end just somehow made it through. But the only thing that I felt was just that I got heinously bumped, but it was definitely awkward and very insecure route.
Well, you said when we spoke yesterday you'd love to make the final. You've done that. Enjoy it, and thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the route despite the heat, and like the heat that we had to survive while like tying in and putting our shoes on was just heinous. And as you start climbing it just gets a little bit better, so I hope for the finals the temperature will be a little bit better. And I mean, I did not really try to get used to the heat, because in a few days I'm going back to Norway where I'll climb in perfect conditions. So
well, hey, you did enough to make it, and just enjoy it.
Thanks.
Romain de Grange then has an early fight on this route. We saw a foot slip for his right foot earlier down the volumes. This is where we lost Stefano. Romain has an incredible wobble but manages to stick to the wall somehow. How he managed to stay on there, I have no idea. This is the true fight of the veteran from the Frenchman here. Incredible effort to keep going.
Yeah, really struggling with the body positions here. Choosing some really interesting beta. Doesn't seem totally comfortable in his feet, but he's making it through, and he's super good at recovering. So hopefully he can find maybe some of the rests the other athletes have seen and pull it together for a finals position.
Romain de Grange is known for having incredible amounts of endurance. He's going to need every ounce of that now. Spins off, couldn't find the right foot at all, looked incredibly pumped low down on the route there. The final men's climber out is Romain de Grange, and we're going to have to see, will it be just enough to get through? It's going to be very, very tight.
Yeah, Magos kind of blew everybody out of the park there with his 44 plus.
Yeah, Alex Magos, 8 moves above Adam Ondra, on a completely different planet, and a very hard 8 moves at that. It was really, really impressive from Alex, and to go through, you know, someone who doesn't do that many World Cups, to go through into the final in the top spot. It'll be interesting to see the psychology of Alex Magos going into tonight's finals.
Yeah, for sure. It could be really stressful potentially. I mean, you know, he comparatively doesn't have as much World Cup experience, but he's super, super fit. In the end, climbing is climbing. And if you're strong and fit, then you are. So, you know, it'll be a really good final nevertheless.
Yeah, I sometimes think we might dwell ever so slightly too much on this whole competition outdoor thing. I remember chatting to Adam Ondra in an interview a few years back, and he tried some route that really wasn't his style, and he said, well, I just know how to climb. And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
It's quite interesting then. We look at Janja Garnbret. She's won so many competitions recently that they've only just finished the introduction here by the local MC. It's taken him a good couple of minutes just to rattle through all of her first places. First place in every Lead World Cup this season. First place in the bouldering last week in Munich. If anybody can get through move 28 plus, it is Janja Garnbret.
Yeah, even that first crux, she more or less campused it. So yeah, it could be really exciting when she gets through that whole 28. Hopefully it's not too awkward and she can manage to come right over the Gaston and then press through into that really, really precise crimp.
It says a lot about this woman that on these moves earlier on that have spat off some of the world's best climbers, we almost don't contemplate that she might fall off. We're already talking about her on the crux, and we saw Mina Markovic fall earlier on, but as yet, very smooth from Janja Garnbret. Once again, you might be able to hear that helicopter behind me. Apologies, they are actually carrying out a rescue, so our live stream certainly slightly less important than that. We'll let them get on with their work, but apologies if they do drown out our microphones slightly.
So Janja Garnbret then setting up nicely for this next section. This is where we saw a few athletes take the rest. She will not know what's happened. She'll get a good idea by the fact the crowd has been relatively static throughout the competition. Quite quiet, which is a strange thing for the Italian crowd. Janja Garnbret then. Said it time and time again, how unbelievable she's been in the competition series. Always seems to do well on the semi-finals routes, always seems to find a top where others have struggled. To find a top here would be an unbelievable event.
Yeah, you don't seem to see many mistakes either. As we said, you're almost assuming she'll get to the crux move, which is a dangerous thing to do, but she so rarely lets you down that you can make that assumption, and here she is setting up for it. So the left foot goes up. Are we about to see a top here from Janja Garnbret? Clips early, she won't have to worry about the clip. Goes back down, resumes the rest. Crowd just waiting. The MC is quiet. Everybody's waiting to see what she can do. Are we about to see our first top here in the semi-final in Arco? It's a legendary venue. We haven't seen any legendary action just yet today. Can Janja Garnbret be the first person to do that? She gets the left hand. Now she's up with the left again. The crowd know that she's just reached a new high point. She probably does too, judging by their reaction. Now she's into the steepest part of the route. We can barely see her, it's so steep. There we have it. We haven't seen any of these moves yet on this women's route so far. She goes up with the right hand. This is a comfortable semi-final win, if you like. This is first place for Janja Garnbret, no problem. She'll be climbing last in the final. We've seen that plenty of times before. Now she sets herself. Just trying to get that awkward clip. The quick draw is just sitting in her lap. She sets herself. You can see the effort showing now. The left hand goes out. Such a powerful shoulder move. The feet are leading now, and she's off.
What a burn that was from Janja Garnbret. She wouldn't have known when she left the ground what she needed to do. She did what she needed to do with ease, and then just went out there for the show. It was a brilliant, brilliant burn. And Janja Garnbret, sometimes it's hard to know exactly how much better she is than some of the other athletes, and it really showed there. She put on a good 3 or 4 moves extra on top of the other athletes sitting in 28 plus. That was a really, really good show of her ability.
And it definitely, the route was so hard after that move. Like, some of the other girls were saying that they weren't very pumped at all when they got there. I think Janja was maybe a little bit pumped and a little bit tired, but yeah, the route looked just as hard going forward. That was insane.
But what was really good is the climbers did, especially in the women's, they got really challenged in terms of the difficulty. The men as well, there was no issues of count back or anything like that. The route didn't come down to time, it came down to difficulty. You know, it wasn't the ideal semi-finals routes, but there were some good fights.
And most importantly, we've got a result for the final. We'll just wait while the results confirmed earlier on. We saw Molly Thompson-Smith's score change, and there it is. Janja Gambra in a very familiar position. First place, she'll be followed by Julia Shanodi, Jane Kim, Jessie Piltz, and Sophie Collar, Molly Thompson-Smith. Anna Verhoeven just makes it in 7th place, and in 8th place, Ashima Shiraishi, a climber so many people are excited to see, and she displaces Tina Johnson-Hafsas in 9th place. Margot Hayes also just misses out in 10th place. You can see all those ties around hole 28.
Yeah, real disasters from the route sets point of view, really. The well, number 28 represented a lot there. That's really not what we wanted to see, and it's gone back to count back from the qualifiers.
And they're in 11th place, Laura Rigora, Salome Roman, Catherine Chung and Risa Ota all tied on 27 plus, and then further down the order we've got Cara Conley, Matteo Becerra, Hannah Schubert, Claudia Gasolfi, 3 climbers that might have expected to be slightly higher up, but no joy today here in Arco. And round 6, Mina Markovic, a woman you always expect to make the final, didn't today, Evgenia Kazbekova. She'll have better days, and Brooke Rabatou, Delaney Miller, Helen Janiko and Moe Yoshimura rounding out your women's 26. And there in the men's, Alexander Megos. It looked an impressive performance at the time. We had no idea just how impressive. He takes first place in today's semi-final. He'll be joined in the final by Adam Ondra, Max Rudiger, Thomas Yuan, Hannes Puman, Jakob Schubert, Kachiro Koronaga, Yoshiyuko Agata. Marcello Bombardi just misses out, and the man of 2017, Romain Desgrange, also misses out.
Well, just very quickly, just so many ties going into the finals. The route sets have really got to go away and have a hard think. They've got to sort out a lot of ties going into the final round, and the pressure's going to be on.
And you can see there further down the order, Ramon A, Sean Bailey, Stefano Gasolfi, names you might expect to be in the final. They won't make it here in Arco. Competition fierce, conditions fierce as well. Domin Skofic and Sebastian Helenka, 2 climbers you would also expect to be much higher up, in a podium earlier this year for Sedir Samolov. He won't be in the final here in Arco. Well, with comedy timing, one of the route setters, cherry pickers, has just appeared behind us just as we come on the camera. I don't know how they do it every time. Well, the finals this evening will be at 5 p.m. We'll have the speed finals at 7 p.m. In the meantime, we, all the athletes and everybody else in Arco, is off to find some air conditioning. We'll see you at 5 o'clock.